I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Yes, indeed. What's up, world? Welcome again to I Mix What I Like Live right here on Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be here, substituting for the crew until we get this Remix morning show going 5 days a week. I'm going to rock with you on Mondays and Fridays until we work that out. So please continue to support that show. And thanks again to all of you for having done so far, and to the whole crew for putting in all this work, both to create the content and but also to work the schedules and do all the things that we have to do to get there. So I really appreciate what everybody's doing, and definitely thank you all for your continued and growing support. Speaking of which, welcome Lo to the channel, and certainly good morning to you, and good morning to everybody else showing up in the chat. Salifu, Sese Mac, good morning. Lisa, good morning. Deborah, buenos dias. Sugar Booger, good morning to you. Love my fro. I used to love my fro. Oh yeah. Anyway, good morning, everybody, and shout out to everybody who's going to see this later in the replay. We have a lot going to happen this morning, so I know people are starting to show up. Couple stories I want to run through. Brother Kaba is going to join me and co-host for at least a little while, and hopefully that's going to become a routine, or as much of a routine as his schedule allows. And I was thinking we should talk about his name in particular. Years ago, I concluded what I understood his name to mean, and I don't think we've ever really talked about it, and I don't think so publicly either. So I'm gonna, but I think that's worthy of a little discussion. So look forward to that. I want to talk a little bit about African Liberation Day, Mad Money for Mamas. We'll come back to this Dr. King thing, and I really want to get into a piece about that I saw on the GrayZone. I want to run a little bit of video and talk with you all about what some things that the economist Michael Hudson had to say that I think are very important, and I don't think are discussed in our circles nearly enough. So I'd like to try to contribute there. And then, of course, in a little while, so I'm thinking closer to 10 a.m. Eastern, we're going to wrap up the show with a discussion of Ruchell Magee. We have a number of guests coming through to talk about him, the longest standing political prisoner. So we're going to be here for a couple hours, rocking with you. Anyway, and definitely if you have some things that you want us to conclude or continue from previous conversations, please jump on the chat. And we will do that. So Kaba is on his way. It's all good. So let me start where I left off yesterday with the Remix morning show, with something I could not for the life of me identify in the moment, even though it's highlighted right here. But it comes from, again, here you go. He's getting there. But this comes again from a brother that and good morning to you, brother Kaba. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Appreciate you jumping on with me this morning, jumping on with us. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me, brother. Looking forward to this.
Yeah. We've worked together and around each other for a number of years, but I don't think we've ever done something like this. So I was thinking, co-hosting.
No, we haven't.
But anyway, if anybody is unfamiliar or for whatever reason, Brother Kaba has done a number of things for a long time, done a lot of radio, a lot of activism, a lot of performing. He's a singer. Anyway, I was just getting lost in all the times I've asked you to come through and rock. I mean, live on the radio. Maybe you have to do some of that here. I don't know. Anyway, but he's also the host of the Monday edition of Jazz and Justice, the African Deep Thought edition of Jazz and Justice on WPFW, the mighty WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington, D.C. And I mean, a number of different things. Say that again.
Jazz and Justice. I was saying, excuse me, Jazz and Justice, that was named by Godfather.
That's right. And that's a perfect segue, talking about our godfather, Doctor, he might as well be, Tom Porter, who gave me this years ago, which is Dr. King's speech from November of 1966 to the SCLC leadership. And I just wanted to quickly point out that what he's talking about in here, again, is a version of himself that has been lost and suppressed through commercial media and otherwise. But what I was trying to catch up to is that he's talking about here about a sort of a collective transformative process that the Black community and Black struggle here in the United States was going through and had gone through at the time. So he talks about, all the developments such as the sit-in movement of the 1960s, the Freedom Rides of 1961, the Albany movement of 62, Birmingham of 63, Selma movement of 65. And then talks about this as a step towards a sort of, as he says, a psychological turning point, where he said we worked almost exclusively in the area of removing the humiliating system of legal segregation and the humiliating practice of the denial of the right to vote. But then what he's talking about here, and the purpose of this is to point out that these were necessary and important, but ultimately insufficient steps and incomplete steps that did not address the material conditions, that did not address even the psychological condition of white America towards their anti-Black white supremacistness. He talks about the insufficiency of all of the civil rights and voting rights legislation going back to, of course, to the 19th century, but of course, the Voting Rights Bill of 1965, which he recognizes, he says here, in a real sense, the bill was written with pen and ink of human sacrifice. But what he's saying is that these legislative and judicial victories did very little to improve the lot of the millions of Negroes in the teeming ghettos of the North. So, of course, we know that 66 was that first summer he spent in Chicago, and then he did it again, tried to do it again. Like, he learned a lot about how white supremacy functioned in the so-called North, which Malcolm had already said was below the Mason-Dixon line, making all of this boot. All of this is the South.
Yeah.
And
he
go ahead.
And he said he also said that one of his most terrifying experience was right outside of Chicago. Trying to integrate a neighborhood there, not far outside of Chicago. Right? He's Cicero, Illinois. So this king is a king that we don't normally get, and I think that's why it's so important for this society to take hold of his legacy and then try to rewrite the narrative. And so with this memorial that's not too far from me, where I am here in D.C. That they have them. It's a beautiful memorial. Mm-hmm. But it really is a concrete example, literally, of how this society has taken the narrative, control of the narrative of who Dr. King what was and is.
And if I remember correctly, when I visited there, there's not one quote from him, or I think there's maybe one quote from him post 66, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, everything is carefully manicured, not only to deny the radicalism that existed before this time period, but there's almost nothing of him from after this time period, where his criticism changed. For instance, to include where he says here, because he was talking about one of the things that had not changed was the material part, but he was also talking about the psychological restructuring that had not occurred. And he said, because he was saying that we have to remember that the ultimate logic of racism is genocide. in a sense, Hitler was one of the most honest men in history because he carried his racism to its logical conclusion. The minute that he concluded that the Jewish people were inferior by nature, then he started killing Jews. And with his sick concepts and his pathological mind and his deep racism, he ended killing 6 million Jews. And the fact is that the ultimate logic of racism is genocide. If you say that I'm not good enough to live next door to you, if you say that I'm not good enough to eat at a lunch counter, if you say that I'm not good enough to go into a hotel or motel because of the color of my skin or the ethnic or my ethnic origins, then you are saying in substance that I deserve not to exist. And so what he's saying is we have to understand that
that's Malcolm. That's Malcolm, right? That was Malcolm. Was that
no,
Malcolm?
it is right,
That
right.
Malcolm
No, exactly. No, that's exactly it. So anyway, I just wanted to quickly point that out. I mean, and then there's more here, but I really just wanted to point out that King himself, even before he was killed, it was clear that all the work he had been part of and that others had been part of was wonderful and important and necessary, but insufficient. So it wasn't that he was disrespecting what they had done. He was saying that we just have to keep going. And there's too much, particularly, ever since and even today, of saying that certain things have been accomplished. And we're certainly getting that messaging, which is in part why, yesterday on the remix, I was trying to talk about the Michael Cord statement again about buying power and all of that, once again saying that we can just be doing certain things that others had done historically when those who did those things historically said themselves that was insufficient and not going to be enough. And in here, he also talks about, King does, the billions of dollars of federal investment that would be necessary to really right the wrongs of economic inequality. And that's ultimately what everybody's usually talking about in various versions of traditions of radical blackness, about just redistribution of all that we are producing. We are already doing it all. So anyway, man, I just wanted to run through that again and real quick. Because,
no, I mean that's important, man, because what you're basically saying, and in the spirit of the remix and in the spirit of free mix radio from way back in the day.
Oh wow, right.
In the mixtape, it's like what they're basically doing is they're sampling. They're sampling King. They, what you do when you sample is you take a record and then you take a small part that you can use that's going to work for the track that you want to make, and then you make that particular sample the entirety of a particular song, right? So that when people like you and I who grew up on hip hop, we might have heard a certain portion of the song and thought that was it, and then we heard the original, like, oh man, there's way more to this song.
There's way more to it.
Like this is incredible.
That's a good point you raised, because there's also, but even within that, there are levels to it. So like there's sampling, like there's DJ Premier sampling, where he takes a piece of an existing or pieces and puts something together where it's unrecognizable, and it's that boom bap, and it's something just delicious.
Dilla as well.
Or Dilla, another perfect example. I just always go to Premiers. Is always my default. That's my default producer.
I mean, I'm a Dilla guy.
And Dilla did the same
Primo,
thing.
I'm a Dilla guy.
Dilla, no question. And in terms of sampling, Dilla did the same thing. It's largely unrecognizable unless you do a deep crate dig or something. But then there's the sampling that was popularized by Puffy.
Did it?
Which is we just go wholesale jack a hook.
Brother Love.
And put it, Brother Love.
Brother
that's right.
Love,
Sorry about
Puffy.
that. Right. I can't.
It's
Puffy.
You got to keep up. You got to keep up, bro. Come on.
And it's all good because it's an African tradition
90s,
to take new names, right? It's within the tradition. It's a library. There it is. Oh wow. Right. So there's that though. So I mean, but to your point though, some sampling is done well and important, and others is just it's just a wholesale destruction of the original. But anyway, yeah. I was trying to pull something up here that I wanted to but anyway, real quick, because I mentioned before you jumped on, I don't think we've ever talked about years ago. I don't even know if we've talked about it at all. Years ago, I had reached a conclusion about what I thought your name means. especially when when you put it all out, when it's Kaba, the soul singer. And I think it's dope. I reached the conclusion that what you did there was very dope. But it also occurred to me that I don't think I've ever asked you specifically what that means. And I thought it might be, especially since Dr. Ichile came through the remix and was spiritualizing for us a little bit and trying to add that element to some of us heathenists, atheists, like that need that a little bit. And I was thinking that if I understood correctly what you were doing with your name, or what is done with your name, this might be a perfect little segue. So I thought I would ask you that this morning, if you wouldn't mind a little discussion of the meaning of Kaaba in your name.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm interested to hear what you thought, what your thoughts were, and then we can go from there.
Okay, well, all right. Oh, wow. Okay, fair enough. So in my I don't know, rudimentary study of what is called religions and spiritual systems, and I looked into when I did look into Kemetic history. I don't remember the details, but the Ka and the Ba are different aspects of what we often describe in the West in Western language as the soul. At different parts, going through the underworld into the so-called afterlife. So anyway, but they were different aspects of the soul, if I'm not mistaken. So that when you had your name laid out as Kaaba, the soul singer, it made perfect sense. Anyway,
essentially that's it. Yeah, no, essentially you're correct. I of course, reading and studying, African history, I came across those aspects, and then I just kept coming across Ka and Ba all the time, and then I would listen to lectures, and for some reason, I'm sure there was a whole lot more to the lectures than in the books, obviously, but for some reason those particular concepts just kept coming back to me. They just jumped out to me. And originally, I came into consciousness or what have you as a 5%er. So, and oddly enough, in the Army of all places.
But oddly enough, there's a lot of that in the military. I mean, there's a lot of those kinds of marginalized or whatever, not centered belief systems and politics in the military. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And no, there's a lot. I mean, as you know, and I've heard you say this before, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think you said last week that, obviously we at this point, we would never advise anybody to join the military. I mean, so this is not an endorsement of the military at all. So, but however, for me personally, it actually was pivotal in my development. Now, I'm not saying, again, let me just be very, very clear.
Right.
That's an aversion. Okay. This is an aberration. Okay. It's not, I don't advise anybody to do that. Certainly none of mine are going into the military. That's for sure. But for me and my development, it was like, I came across these 5%ers and actually it was a brother that I had grown up with who ended up being stationed right there. One of my boys, like one of my real boys, like I hung out with. He actually ended up being stationed in Panama, where your wife is from, with me, and of all places, two boys from some small town in Florida ended up getting stationed in Panama together. And I mean, what are the chances of that? And then he introduces me, and he's next door to me. He's in the same battalion. Like I'm headquarters company. He's Alpha company, so he's literally next door. Like my boys. Like think of one of your people that you hung out with all the time. It was like one of my boys ended up being and he ended up joining a few months after I did. But so long story short, he introduces me to this brother who's a 5%er, who's also a singer, and that was kind of like the bridge. And the brother, we started talking about singing, and then next thing you know, he started asking me who was the original man. Right. The original man is the Asiatic black man. And all this other stuff. Brother. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the Malcolm X. I know you love Spike Lee's Malcolm X. I know that's like
of course. Movies. How could we not?
But it's like in that movie, like, who are you? You know, that kind of thing. So that was my introduction, man. So I came into it as a 5%er. So anyway, fast forward, my name as a 5%er was Truth Born, brother Truth Born, Allah, you know. And so eventually I started reading and studying the history and the culture of Africa, different all around the continent. And then I came to the Ka Naba, and that's kind of like how I came to the name.
Right on, man.
And the soul singer part obviously is, you know, right along with it. Yeah.
And it makes sense. I mean, all of it makes sense. I mean, you know, anyone who's heard you sing, I mean, that's what, you know, you bring the soul. And that is funny because, no, I would never recommend it either, obviously, but it was not a 5%er, but another branch of Islam, brother, that sort of, and his crew that sort of try to, you know, drag me into some relative consciousness when I was in the military too. And it was, you know, that kind of, you know, it seems like the light is on, and you talk a lot of trash, but it's directionless, brother. So, you know, anyway, and it was important. It did help. I can't front. I mean, but that's always the problem, that the rites of passage that we need is not, doesn't happen naturally anymore. It's not institutionalized as it should be. So a lot of what we get in other places. I mean, there were aspects of boot camp and the military process that I appreciated. The camaraderie, the you know, when you're forced to do stuff together, to you know, to struggle, to be broken down, to be humbled. I mean, it didn't feel good in the moment, but you know, I get it. When they said we're going to break you down and turn you into sailors, I get it. That's the point, to shed some of the ego, shed some of the dumbness, shed some of the lack of focus, and then be rebuilt into something else. Now, if that something else could be African revolutionaries or whatever, that would be ideal, but that's not obviously what those institutions do. But there were aspects and elements of that process that I appreciated, and I felt that I needed and was looking for. And in fact, in boot camp, I tried even to get in trouble to get more intensive. That's actually weird. I tried to actually get more like intensive. Like I felt like the Navy wasn't that rough. Boot camp wasn't that difficult physically, and I wanted more. So I kept trying to get in trouble.
The Navy's soft.
It is.
The Navy is soft.
The Navy is soft. It is. But I kept like, until you get to other levels. So like I remember when we got in trouble in boot camp, you got to sent to this extra training with like retired SEALs, and then things got a little more difficult and painful. but anyway, other than that, I mean, you know, so anyway, but certainly I would prefer that we did.
Yeah, like a David Goggins moment. Yeah, like a David Goggins. You know, you familiar with him?
Yeah.
You wanted one of those kind of, you wanted to feel the pain. You wanted to bring the pain.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, in that moment, you know, in that youthful moment where I you know, anyway, was looking for challenges in the wrong places. That's all. Just looking for the wrong kind of challenges, you know, trying to, and Craig Bardo, yeah, we definitely have to talk, because I know your military, not an endorsement, but some of what we learned was useful. Yeah, that's true. I mean, some of what we learned was useful. And then certainly in the yeah, remind me though, what am I not remembering about him though? What are the details of this cat?
David Goggins?
Yeah.
He basically had to do SEALs. He tried out for SEALs like 3 different times.
That's right.
He basically has a concept where he likes to embrace the ugly, as he called it. I actually read his book, Can't Hurt Me. It's actually a fascinating book.
Oh wow.
You know, he's kind of like he's borderline sadomasochist though. He goes a little hard. But I think the general point though is that you need to push yourself in order to get the best out of yourself. That's basically the essence. But I mean, like, really push yourself. Like he pushes himself. He trained for marathons, you know, having not been a runner, with like basketball shoes on or something like that, without the right equipment, you know, just kind of putting himself through, and this, you know, basically saying that it's a mindset that you have to kind of develop.
That's right. No, that was not
Navy
me.
SEAL. He became Army. He did Army Ranger and all that other stuff. He did a whole bunch of stuff.
No, that wasn't me. That wasn't the level I wanted.
Right.
So that wasn't me. And in fact, when they came in boot camp, when they said, based on your ASFAB scores, we want to see if you want to do the SEALs. And at the time, I said, well, I thought, okay, I did think, I don't mind trying to go through that. But I said, but they said it would require that you add more to your enlistment and do a minimum of 6 years, if I'm not mistaken. I was like, nah. Because I was always clear. I'm here for a specific, and I'm getting out as soon as possible. So they were like, yeah.
Listen, bro. I remember when I was at the MEP station, which is like this processing center. It was in Tampa, where in my area. And so we were all going through there, and they were lining us up. Why are you here? Why are you here? Why you want to be a soldier? People standing up. Oh, I want to support our country. Oh, I want to defend our country against Iraq, because at that time it was the Iraq War was going on. I wanted the first one. The 90, 91, 90, early 90s. I want to defend the country. Blah blah blah. This and that. And they were like, "Why do you want to join the military?" I was like, "I'm just trying to get some money for college, so I can, go on with my life. I'm not trying to be a career soldier." I mean, that's what and they were all looking at me like, everybody was like, "Oh, yeah, you got to be a patriot." And I wasn't even conscious. I wasn't
right.
Didn't have any politics or anything like that.
The baseline blackness.
I mean, baseline Public Enemy. I got a letter from the government.
Right.
I opened and read it. That said they were suckers. Even though I knew that, I still didn't have any direction with the consciousness. So, I ended up getting a letter from the government and actually said, "Okay, sign me up." Because I goofed off my last couple of years of high school, barely graduated high school. And so I just needed, my father was like, "What you gonna do? Because you're not gonna sit around here acting a fool." So I basically, how it is. I mean, working class folks, we got certain options, and that was the option. So I had to take it.
Man, Anyway,
I had to take it, but I did it.
Well, look, I was in there under duress, and in the Baltimore MEP station where I was in a room, and they had come in and they said, anybody who is here who thinks that they're enlisting to avoid charge will hit you with fraudulent enlistment, and you'll serve the term of your enlistment in Leavenworth. So if you've done that, line up against the wall. And I promise you, it was like me, and I felt like at the time, like half the room at least got up. I know the brother next to me did, because he was already telling me, he was already worried. He was like, I don't think I can leave the state to go to boot camp. I'm kind of sneaking to do this. And then the guy came in and made this announcement, and I was panicked. I was terrified. So I was enlisting under duress for sure. But yeah, but I was just always clear, like, I don't want to be here. So I need to keep this as short as possible. So every time they said, would you like to do something? I was like, yeah. You want to do air rescue? I thought about that. I was like, yeah, helicopters and jump in the water, save people. I was like, hell yeah. They were like minimum 6 to 8 year enlistment. Nope. All right. Nope. So what can I do for 4 years or less? And they were like, nothing. Basically, they were like, nothing exciting. What I ended up doing, sweeping and painting and cleaning and doing dishes and taking out trash, and every once in a while shooting a machine gun.
I signed up for 2 years. I had a pretty good ASVAB score as well, and they were trying to get me to enlist. They were trying to get me to go to officer school, OCS, officer school, and all this stuff. And so I was like, I'm doing 2 years. Like, do you want it? Well, if you do 4, I'm doing 2 years. Well, if you do 6, I'm doing 2 years. Well, even if you do 3, I'm doing the minimum of 2 years. That's it. And so I pumped gas. that was my job.
Man.
77 Foxtrot. That was my MOS.
Wow. They even gave me
a job.
Wow. Yeah, that was it. I mean, I did all I got, anyway, man, look, one of these days I would like to, I think some real stories of that experience should be told. I don't see a lot of them in film or on television, in terms of real life military experience, that isn't, glorifying war or trying to put some other message together. But listen, I know you don't have all morning with us today, and that I know I'm at least trying to make this a thing we're doing this morning more routine. But I did want to ask you a little bit, because one of the things that I always appreciate about our interaction and the work that you do, and actually the way I thought I would ask about it, because I frankly I missed Monday's show, so I was going to ask you what you did on Monday's show to sort of talk a little bit about, for anyone maybe not fully aware, use that as a segue to talk about your particular approach to what I'm loosely describing as the African-centered world. So you know, and because anyway, because I like the way, I don't know, I like I like the sort of differences in our approach, and where they dovetail and even where they don't. But anyway, so I thought I would start there, as I know you're going to be, you know, sort of fading out from us this morning. But anyway, if we start with Monday and then go with how does that help frame your approach?
So Monday, I actually, most of the show I had our good sister Tierney Cherie on.
Oh, really?
You know, just kind of introducing people to her platform. One of the things I wanted to do, one of the kind of recurring themes that I'm talking about, just in the context of African-centered thought, is controlling our thought. I talked about African deep thought. African deep thought is basically a transliteration, which is the literal meaning of what the Africans called Seba, which has loosely been kind of translated as SBA, which basically means deep thought. And the Seba, the B in the Seba was then kind of, I guess, corrupted when the Greeks came in, because they didn't have a phonic, you know, representation for the b sound at that time, and so it became Sepha, and then obviously when you anglicize that, make it into English, it becomes Sophia, which is wisdom. So then the philo, you add that to it, and it's the love of, and then the Sophia is wisdom. So basically, the root of philosophy is African. It comes from the words and the symbol Seba, which is usually depicted. Actually, I have the book right here. Dr. Asa Hilliard, that's the depiction of what Seba is, which is philosophy. He goes deep into that with that, and I used to actually take and for those, and this is not some YouTube scholarship that, you know, says this sounds like this, so therefore, you know, the kind of character stuff. I actually did take metametric classes or hieroglyphics classes with a brother by the name of Ankami Ra, who wrote a book called Let the Ancestors Speak. It was a self-published book. It was the first Black American person to publish a book on metametric. Now, he was not an Egyptologist. However, he worked very closely with Dr. Teofilo Obenga, who also worked with Dr. Cheikh Anta. And so Obenga considered him a colleague. So he passed away about 14 years ago now, 2007. So I did study with him. So I'm able to kind of on a very rudimentary level understand some of the symbols. But anyway, so I wanted to get people to understand what deep thought is, and the deep thinkers that we have, and the deep concepts that some of our ancient people had, like Tahotep and Kagemne, and Ani, and many other ancient African philosophers that a lot of times we don't have any idea about. And a lot of their concepts have been basically revivified by more modern scholars and presented as something that's new. And many of these concepts that people have are not believed to be new, are really not new. These are very ancient concepts. The Book of Tahotep is the oldest known book in the world, the oldest complete book. There are older books, but there are only fragments of them found. But the oldest complete book in the world was the book of, or the teachings, or the dictums, or the axioms of Ptahotep, who was one of the philosophers in the early Kemetic or Egyptian period. And so just understanding what African philosophy is. So that's basically the upshot of the show. But anyway, going back to the media piece, I say all that in the concept of just, you know, getting a framework that's our own. But one of the things I wanted to do by having you all on a couple of weeks ago, before the launch of the morning show, was just to get people exposure to, I wouldn't even call it alternative. It should be primary media sources, which are ours, which give us a more full perspective of the world that we're living in and an interpretation. I tell people all the time that as their Prez says, turn off the radio. I say, turn off the radio, turn off the TV. You know, it's useless. And I'm a person, I have a background in journalism, working in media for a long time. So I'm telling you from an insider's perspective, I've sat in on meetings and people talking about this is what we're going to push. And this is what, you know, so there is an agenda, no question about it. And so I know from just that perspective,
you've
turn
definitely
off the radio, turn off the
been
TV.
in that. You've definitely been in that commercial media space a little bit in ways. Certainly, I've never seen it on that, not in that way from the inside. So we definitely have to get into some of that going forward. Hear some of those stories. Real quick, man, before you go this morning, and if you have more time than I thought, then definitely I'm not rushing you, but I'm trying to be mindful of what I
got time.
Okay, because I thought you said you had to dip at 8:45 or something. Didn't you tell me?
No, I make it work. Like I said, I did, but like I said, I make it happen today. So I cleared some stuff out.
All right, my bad. Okay.
Make it happen. Yeah.
All right. Well, one thing I did want to ask you about is
brother, rush me out the door, man, like I'm Kalonji or somebody, man. I'm not, I know we both got locks and we're a little brown, but you know, this ain't Kalonji. I mean, you can rush
I start blacking out, pun
me,
intended. When I see all that melanin and all those locks, I start freaking out, man. I'm like, man, it's like Kalonji and triplet. Yeah, it's too many Kalonji. It's not, no, you all look like Kalonji. That's the problem. It's not. It's a Kalonji thing. He's traumatized in working with this brother, man. I'm telling you now. And we got to talk about that too.
He had the locks first. You know, when you.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say he had the locks first because when we met, I had a bald head, so you know
that's right. And he showed the picture. He was quick to show the pictures that of all that too, man.
Yeah.
But you know I did want to ask you also then, and it's good we have more time with it then, because you know, like in today's world, I wonder, you know, and a lot of I'm coming to this from my experience with my students who are almost exclusively from certainly the African world and almost entirely working class or so-called lower from here in the United States. And I struggle a little bit with where we are with an African identity. You know, you've already talked a little bit about African consciousness, et cetera, and so forth. And so I'm wondering, not only in terms of why would that still be important, but how do you see effectively transmitting that message today? I mean, it seems a bit more difficult to I don't know, to get that kind of self-concept across. And there's more both presentation of an African diaspora, but also in a way that's not necessarily radically conscious or even Pan-African. So you know, young people in particular are getting a lot of messaging, a lot of images. Some of it may be contradictory. You know, there might be a lot of beautiful Black people on camera, but they're not necessarily espousing a certain consciousness. And then the world out of which you come and that I've crossed paths with at least a little bit, I don't know, man. It's either parodied on YouTube or in popular form, you know, in this Hotep thing and all the fake woke and all that kind of language, I think confuses and all that. Anyway, man, so you know, what do you think about where we are with all of that?
Well, first of all, I have to say that we have to teach them that, you know, the very first snowman was Black, you know. So I'm just you know, but that's one of that's kind of like the caricature. I was laughing about that yesterday with the brother, you know, because I think that was on Martin or something like that. And I know you've talked about this before about how, you know, the super Black character is always like some kind of parody and a caricature. You know, so we were kind of laughing about that the other day. Some of that stuff, you know, one of the things I think, one of the approaches I'll say that worked for me, when usually somebody would say, "Oh, you must be one of those Hotepers" or something like that, is I have a sense of humor, as you know. I think that we have to kind of, for lack of a better term, you know, not take ourselves too seriously when engaging. I'm talking one-on-one. I'm not talking about the media escape in general. But I think that's one of the things is that we do have to kind of like acknowledge the fact that some of those jokes are funny. I mean, I like to laugh, and I'll laugh at myself if it's funny. Some of the stuff is funny. And I think for me, I've kind of used that as an entree point. And it's kind of worked And it's kind of disarming to people when they say, okay, this dude, he's laughing at it, so he's really not he's not the caricature. So let me take another look at that. Now, in terms of going directly at your question, because it had to deal with the mass piece, I think getting on, this is a prime example of what you all are doing here with Black Power Media, which is getting on platforms that kind of legitimate people, these social media platforms, for young people, particularly your students, people your students age. And I'm sorry, I think I may have some connection issues. So please bear with me.
No, you all right.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, it's just the bigger honestly, the bigger connection issue for me is there's the sound. I don't know if it's the mic you're using or the headset or there's like a big there's a big hiss.
I got something for that.
Okay. So hold on real quick while he does
I
this.
actually have them.
Okay, hold on a second. While you're doing that, I'm just gonna mute you just quickly because let me just to say I'm only seeing a little bit in the chat. I don't know to what extent this is becoming a distraction, but I will say this. We started with Dr. King. And anyway, I would just encourage if anyone wants, if you actually go and read Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community, the last full-length book he wrote, or even these speeches to the SCLC leadership, you'll notice that King is very clear that the issue he has with Black Power is not that they are so-called Black supremacists. The issue is that it for him was at least a tactical issue. So there's this issue of Black people the issue of Black people being somehow supremacist or racist as in the equivalent of the Klan, because there's a redefinition or a reclamation of an identity that has been suppressed through enslavement and colonization, etc. I mean, that's silly. So stop misrepresenting and misquoting King and actually read the man. I know it's hard to do that these days because he is, as I keep arguing, the most known and least understood person in human history, second maybe only to the historical Jesus Christ. But please read the man's work or go listen to what he had to say. He's quoted routinely as talking about being proud of his beautiful Blackness and the heritage from where he comes, and recognizing his even being his Pan-African connection to the African community and struggle. So this don't do that stuff. Did I take the bait? Maybe I took the bait. I did, it's possible. But anyway, anyway, but to his point, to Kaba's point, there is a lot of good stuff happening at Black Power Media. And of course, later in just a little while, there's some stories that I want to get to. And if Brother Kaba is got the time, I'll invite him to check some of this stuff out. Especially since, well, we definitely have to talk about this while he's here with African Liberation Day coming up. Speaking of which, we got from the All African People's Revolutionary Party, speaking of Pan-Africanism, Guinea Conakry, AAPRPGC. We have Bob Brown coming up in a couple weeks on the 17th, or in 10 days, I should say, to talk with us about a little bit about that and that history in advance of that. I think that coming weekend's African Liberation Day festivities in the DC area and around the world. In fact, and my comrades in the All African People's Revolutionary Party are going to be sharing some more information about that as well. Did I say colleagues? I should certainly have said comrades for that one. Absolutely, Ricky. No doubt, the most wonderful time of year, African Liberation Day. And the only frustrating thing for me, I didn't even mean to click that, but that, I guess, I hope that's funny. I'm not catching the context of that, but I hope that's a good one. Oh, hold on. I think Kaba, I think we got you back. Um,
Can you hear me better?
no, not well. For some reason, that's not coming through well.
Okay, let me.
It's a little bit. There's something there, but
What about now?
I mean, I'm hearing you. It's just not strong for some reason. I don't know what. And then there's still the hiss, but it's all right, man. I mean, say that again. Uh-oh, now I think we froze. He froze. All right, hold on a second. We're gonna work this out. We're gonna get this together. And then in a little over an hour at 10 o'clock, we're going to be joined by a number of guests to talk about the longest held political prisoner, Ruchell Magee, and talk about his story and talk about certainly why he's still there and hopefully at least why it's been so difficult to get him to be part of the discussion, even within political prisoner conversation. Let's try. How we trying again? How we doing? Now I don't hear anything. Wait a minute. Hold on.
I'm still muted.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, and that sounds good, actually.
All right, good. I just
boom.
I have a microphone, so I was trying to do it through the headphones, through the Bluetooth.
Oh yeah, no, always use the mic, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, I know. Yeah.
But I know you know. That's what I'm saying. So real quick. So then, how much time do you have? Because let me start there before, because that'll help at least, you know. Anyway, what is your time like?
However much time you need. However much time.
Well, I mean, if you can hang out, I mean, you're welcome to stick around for the Ruchell Magee conversation at 10 o'clock too, if you want. But certainly up until then, if you got the time. I mean, I'm you know.
Cool. I'm good. I'm good until about 11.
Oh wow, that's what's up. So we should be probably wrapping up about that time anyway. So that's what's up. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, good. So then let me do this. I'm trying to, let me ask you this, since we were just talking about it. Are you doing anything or are you already planning for something? Because what I was going to say was, one of the only frustrating things for me about African Liberation Day over the years, particularly in DC, was the overlapping and competing underattended events that between all of these factions, these Pan-African factions that for whatever reason don't quite want to unify or can't quite get on the same page. So it would be like, I remember, you know, some years in particular going from one, trying to support everybody, and everywhere I'm going, there are like pockets of 5 to 15, maybe, you know, more people, but it would be like, wow, why don't we all? And anyway, so that was the only frustrating thing about African Liberation Day for me, in my humble experience. But anything that you would want to say about that, or anything about what you're going to be doing, or even in terms of programming on your show, or I don't know, any events in particular that you're going to be involved with that you know of already?
Yeah, you know, as far as the unity piece, I think that's really. And I got to be careful how I say this, because I don't want to offend people. But DC is a very interesting place. I was just talking to somebody about. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. The people here are very. It's unlike a lot of places where I've visited and lived. I think am I still there? Am I breaking up?
No, you seem fine to me. I don't know what you're seeing over there, but
yeah. Okay, I just look kind of crazy, but yeah, I think the people here are kind of it's kind of clannish, it's kind of cliquish in DC, more so, and it's like that everywhere, but I mean more so in DC. I don't know if it's got anything to do with the political piece here. You know, I generally find that people are kind of more standoffish. And this is in general. You know, I'm speaking generally, and not everybody, but there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of like kind of like gritting on you like, who is this dude? Who is this person? Who are they a part of our crew or a part of our clique? And it's not just like that in the Pan-African space. It's even as an artist, it's like that. Like you have to belong to a certain group of artists clique. If you don't belong to this particular clique, then you just don't get much love, or we don't go to this particular venue, or So I think that's just a general issue in this region, the DC region, the greater area. So I don't know what to say about that, because it just seems like that just permeates the whole area. In terms of myself and ALD, I will be doing some programming around that, and possibly some events. Some of the events I'm aware of right now, I'm on some calls with, are probably going to be mostly virtual, of course, as COVID. Right now we're getting ready to do our annual Kuzaliwa, which is an annual commemoration of Malcolm X. And what we like to do is deal with certain aspects of him, and some of his ideas and ideology that we can actually put into practice, and operate within a community kind of setting. So this year we're working on that as well. So those two things right there. I don't have the information right here in front of me in terms of ALD. But to your point, there is a lot of competition with that historically, and I think that and again, I think it's just more of a DC kind of thing. I think that's an outgrowth of the ethos here in this area.
I can see that. Okay, well, I hope it doesn't is not as it doesn't permeate as much around the country, around the diaspora, but unfortunately, I suspect it might.
People can let us know.
That's a good idea.
I was in the UK. I was in and people could put in the chat wherever you're from. What the African Liberation Day situation is like where you're from. But I was in the UK. I guess 2 years ago. I was there, and it was actually during African Liberation Day. And it was actually in Birmingham. Now we say Birmingham, but they say Birmingham. And apparently Birmingham has been a hotbed of like, organizing and Pan-Africanism for a long time. And it seemed to be very, very, very strong. Now, of course, that a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's not a whole lot of Black folks in the UK. And so of course they're going to be more unified because it's just a smaller number. So there's not enough to be kind of like, broken off into different little pieces and whatnot. Actually, one of the people who was there speaking that year was Tony Browder, who actually was just happened to be there at the time.
So you went all the way across the world to see somebody who's right down the street from you every day. That's how that works out.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, people hit the like button. There's like 100 people watching and 17 likes. That's what's up.
No like.
Hit the like button. Hit the join button. We are expanding on the channel, by the way. So if you can muster some channel membership, please do. Many more shows and programs coming, obviously with the remix. And we want to start. There's a lot of things we're trying to do. So all the money we raise is redistributed.
Let me show my shirt too.
Oh yeah, it was on the right on.
Got it.
Yeah, you win the shirt game today. You win the
Mandela. That's yeah.
You were saying what about Mandela?
Well, I know since I'm on this channel, I know everybody rocks the fly t-shirt. I would just say, and the Mandela that's referenced on this is Winnie, by the way. I'm just saying for just so folks, just for folks' information. I'm talking about Winnie.
Right on. I heard that.
We give Nelson his credit where it's due, but for this particular shirt, we all about Winnie. We team Winnie over here.
Team Winnie, and
somebody go get the tires.
She was whoa. See, now you start to sound like Kalanji. But to that point, man, she had been on my interviewing bucket list, man. I had tried to reach through whatever connections I could, to get an interview with her. And I remember some years ago, speaking of Birmingham, she was in Alabama. I want to say this maybe 10 years ago. I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe. And she was doing some tour through the states or something, or through this hemisphere or whatever. And I was calling everybody, and I got to somebody on her team, and it could never get to her, or it's scheduled. And it never, we never could make it happen. Anyway, I did research on her in grad school, became huge. I mean, I was like, wow, they did a number on Winnie in terms of the representation. And yeah, I see in the chat, I was, I became all, I was all Winnie, team Winnie. Anyway, so I was trying. And to that point.
Yeah, and it goes back to that piece about Dr. King too. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But it goes back to that point about Dr. King, just on the opposite end, on the inverse of the piece about Dr. King, how, the narrative is shaped around him a certain kind of way. Of course they can't clean up Winnie at all, and they can't work. They don't have enough material to work with. Winnie, they can't reconfigure that. So they like, look, we're just gonna totally just ostracize her all the way, because she was the real deal. And matter of fact, on WPFW, some years ago after Mandela passed, there was some folk who were really from South Africa who they had on one of the shows, Africa Now, as Brother Muiza had somebody on there, and the brother was coming. He was coming. He was coming hard. Like, look, he set the record straight. I'll just say that, So anyway, because back to Winnie, they couldn't do anything with Winnie. Yeah, they couldn't clean that up, So shout out to Winnie Mandela.
You know what? Somebody in the chat asked about suggested reading on Winnie, and I remember we read her her biography. What was it? His heart was with me, or he never left me, or my heart was with him, or something like that. That would be one thing.
A lot of my books are packed up, so I don't have.
Yeah, me too, man. We got a household issue that I'm struggling with for a long time now, about how to. But I will suggest this humbly, that when I was in grad school, the paper that I submitted at the Africana Center while I was there, I put on imixwhatilike.org, titled Nomzamo, which is her original African name for meaning trial, and I cannot do the click, unfortunately, in Kosa. But in here, I would, I think the paper's pretty good, even looking back as a little grad student paper. But in here, there are sources that I use that might help. Leonard Thompson's A History of Africa, Bernard Magubane, The Making of a Racist State. Right, Part of My Soul Went With Him, Winnie Mandela's autobiography. I brought out Brother Amos as well, Amos Wilson's Blueprint for Black Power, Du Bois, African Roots of War. So specific to Winnie, here's one, Sitole Nokwanda, forgive me for any mispronunciation, an Essence magazine story. Wow, I must have thought that was pretty good. Or at least it had some information in it. But there's a piece, I'm wondering where I got it, because one of these sources, maybe it was this one, Gail Robinson's Mandela's Watch. One of these sources, or maybe it was this one, the Turbulent. Anyway, one of these sources talks about that. So I would encourage it just for source material. And I'll put the link in the chat if anybody wants to follow up. But there was a part. Oh, what happened? We lost Kaba? Oh, my bad, man. I didn't even realize it. What happened. I hope he can jump back. But anyway, one of the points that I thought was fascinating about the research was that I obviously don't remember the details, that there was a specific white man charged by the state of South Africa his special service or his intelligence agency work was all his job was to plant stories, concoct stories for the press, to make Winnie look bad. And I just remember thinking at the time, and I still kind of reflect on it when it comes up like now, like, damn, I mean, that, never mind everything else, the surveillance, the arrests, the everything else, it was to have someone whose sole purpose was to make her look bad in the press, I think said a lot about, you know, what she represented in terms of the struggle for liberation in Tanzania and throughout the African world. And as she was often called the mother of Africa, she did come to represent a lot of the radical vision of the African diaspora in the continent and struggle. So of course they would have to do that. So yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. I don't know if it's what I'm looking at over here. It can't really be that we have well over 100 people watching and only 17 likes. That can't be right. That doesn't even make any sense. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the join button, hit all the bells on the subscribe button so you don't miss anything on the channel. We have a lot coming up, you know, more Riot Starter TV coming up, speaking of Kalanji, Renegade Culture. I mean, just today alone, at 10 a.m. in a little less than an hour, we're going to be joined by supporters of Ruchell Magee for discussion of the longest held political prisoner. Kaba's coming back in just a minute. Later today is Lukman Nation at 5 o'clock, the last dope intellectual that features my man, Dr. Todd Stephen Burrows, in a conversation you do not want to miss about Freedom Ways magazine with Dr. CBS. That joint is fire. You definitely don't want to miss that. Also, what does she say? What does Dr. CBS say about critical race theory? I mean, anyway, this is some gems for sure in this next episode. And then after that is Renegade Culture. So that's just on your Friday night. And then tomorrow, I think Kalanji is going to drop his Riot Starter interview. I think that's tomorrow. So there's a lot coming. And then we have a special Mother's Day Sundays edition with the Ear Doctor, 8 o'clock Eastern time, Sunday night, Mother's Day. For those who celebrate, you know, these Western imposed, you know, whatever, rock on with Black Power Media and Sundays. And then I'll be back Monday morning to hold it down until the remix crew can get there. And we're going to be talking with Davey D, who does not agree with me about my presentation of the false hip hop narrative and the rebranding and the false historical narrative created in part by misrepresenting C. Dolores Tucker. So he's going to come on. We're going to talk about that. And then we're also going to be joined by the national organizer of Black Alliance for Peace, Ajamu Baraka, and Charo Mina Rojas for a discussion specifically of what's happening in Colombia, my Panamanian neighbor, you know, country. And shout out to Darien and my African cousin-in-laws out there right at that border, that Panamanian Colombia border, in parts of the world people don't want to go. It can get a little rough out there. But shout out to Darien and all them Africans out there holding it down in Central America, or what is called Central America. Anyway, so a lot coming up. And then Tuesday morning is remix. I mean, we right back with the remix and a lot coming up there as well. So anyway, let me get into a couple of things here, and while Brother Kabab continues to try to get back on here, I mentioned, I mean, let me use Winnie Mandela in this way, in this segue. You know, we're talking about the mother of Africa, the underappreciated and misrepresented, you know, African woman revolutionary. And brother, this is perfectly timed because, unfortunately, within our movement, within our struggle in particular, we aren't caring enough for the mothers of our revolution. And I know over time we're going to talk more about it on this channel, on this show, on this network, or this in this collective. And she rocks with us on a regular basis anyway. But Sister Ichile, Dr. Iyelli Ichile, has been putting something together that I definitely want to support, that unfortunately needs support, because frankly, not enough of us as Black men, African men, revolutionaries, radicals, whatever, are doing right by the women in our community. Oh, and look at this. Shout out to Dr. Todd Stephen Burrows, who's right there, having freshly donated. And in fact, I don't think I have, so I might as well go ahead and do that while I'm here too. The real point is that Dr. Ichile is having to raise money, or feels it necessary to have started this campaign to raise money for Black women who are being abused and mistreated and dealt with harshly by let me see. Can I just start sharing this one? Okay. Anyway, by Black men, and they need support. They need that's not the one I wanted to share. I wanted to go to the other one. They need housing. They need places to go when they can't go home anymore. They need, in some cases, I'm assuming, maybe medical supplies, etc. So, as she says here, domestic violence is a pervasive issue within our community. While we acknowledge the fact that people of any gender can be victims and/or perpetrators of domestic violence, we are focused on women victims in this particular initiative, with the specific goal of supporting those who have children. Children of domestic abuse victims are often abused, either directly or indirectly, as a result of the abuse of their mothers. Abused women and their children may suffer losses in terms of physical safety, psychological and emotional health, financial stability, educational access, and social isolation. Far too frequently, women are abused in full view of our community without any recourse. Many more experience abuse without the necessary support to extricate themselves and their children from the situation. Mothers who lack the financial resources to get safe housing, pay for basic needs, or get legal representation risk losing their children, which deepens the rupture in families already facing a crisis. Add to this the omnipresent issue of racism, and the outlook becomes especially bleak for mothers and children of African descent. Mad Money for Mamas is a small fund which will be used to help mothers in need of immediate financial assistance with legal fees, housing, healthcare expenses, childcare costs, therapeutic services, and other necessities. The overall objective is to help these mothers stay in the fight to keep themselves and their children safe, to hold their families together, and to liberate themselves from their abusers. We will use all process to help proceeds, probably, right? Yeah. Who need urgent, immediate support. Their identities and stories will not be told here in the interest of their safety, but the goal is to eventually formalize and expand this fund so that our impact can be greater. Our goal is to raise $10,000 for this first go round. The figure is based on very detailed conversations with the mothers about their immediate needs and the costs associated with them. Thank you for your support. So definitely consider, if you can. The link will go in the description and the show notes for this show. I will also drop it in the chat so that anyone interested and available can support. And we encourage people to please spread the word. And there is the link in the chat. And again, it will go in the show notes as well. So Brother Kaba, I thought I would just raise this with you very briefly, at least, as just get your thoughts on what I think is I admit, I don't talk a lot about it and haven't done certainly enough about it, but as Dr. Ichile's note points out, these things happen in full view of the community. I have been aware over the years of men who have perpetrated these acts of violence against women, and I'll just simply say my response has been insufficient. But anyway, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it's obviously ultimately we can look at it as a product of the system that we live in, for sure. But at the end of the day, we are the ones who are going to have to do something about it, because obviously the system is not going to fix it, because the system is the reason why it exists in the first place. When I mentioned before, when I came into all of this as a 5%er, eventually I moved into kind of like an African-centered worldview. And actually one of the main reasons why was I read Dr. Marimba Ane's book, Yurugu, an African-centered critique of European cultural thought and behavior. And one of the things between reading the book and then watching the interview that the classic interview that she did with ancestor now Elizabeth Middleton on For the People, which was a powerful, very powerful television show where he would interview many people, many of our scholars and thinkers and theoreticians. That's when I became really acquainted with the African worldview, and of course then Sekou Diop and others as well highlighted this in the cultural unity of Black Africa, where both of them and others as well, so many of their sources can be checked out as well for this. But we come from a matriarchal society, a matrifocal society, in that women were always centered in the society. And I think this is where culture is very important in understanding our culture as African people, because if we understand that we come from a matriarchal society where women were uplifted, women were revered and honored, not just on some kind of, level where you're just trying to, impress the sisters and so you can get with a sister, peace queen, like there's a meme out there that's like, don't be peace queen to me and then trying to rub me down. I clean it up a little bit, but rub me down at the same time, and they have like LaWanda Page, who played Aunt Esther as the
oh
picture.
wow,
but not from that perspective, but from the perspective of, we just truly understood that this is where life came from on the planet, and so there was always a reverence for the mother. The family line went through the mother. And this is all pretty much any indigenous culture all over the world. Indigenous cultures did this, and of course, since we are the earliest ones, started with us. So, what I'm basically saying, long story short, is that we've fallen away, far away from that, and it's time to get back to that and to truly understand that we have to protect the sisters. It's not to say that we didn't. I know about Ya Santiwa. I know about Nzinga. I know about Nanny of the Maroons. I know about my lineage ancestry comes from Benin, so I know about the so-called Amazons of Dahomey. So I know all about that. And at the same time, as men, we have to be able to respect and protect the sisters in a real way. And I think that it's unfortunate that there's a culture, because I think some of the scholarship is talking about, basically rape culture, which really is just about a disrespect of women and a commodification and an objectification of women, where women are no longer looked at as the source of life, but looked at that's just something to be used and discarded. One of the things that I think we can do is we have to have, like you mentioned before, rites of passage with our young men. My oldest son just went through just this past year, and I was a part of the whole process. And I think the brothers, they really get a different perspective when they are surrounded by men, particularly who are very serious about our culture and very serious about manhood. And y'all kind of touched on some of that yesterday when you were talking about protection and self-defense, and obviously too, the sisters, certainly need to learn that, simply because you got fools out here who would rather put their hands on them as opposed to, you know, walk away if they need to walk away, because sometimes things just don't work out. So I think just as men, we have to really get it more involved in rites of passage programs. There's a wonderful one here that's been around for over 45 years here in DC called Ancobia. They have both a men's society and a women's society, and as I mentioned before, I'm a part of that society now because my eldest graduated, and I'll be working with them going forward as well. You know, presenting, you know, for our young men different aspects about what manhood is in our culture. I think that's just very important for us to do, and to model that with the way we treat ourselves, number one, and then of course the women in our lives. And then I'll also say this too, because I know that there's some men who say, you know, well, there's abuse, you know, women abuse men sometimes too, and it's like, you know, come on, dude, like that's like such an anomaly. That's not, it's not this.
I got to get clear on it, because Dr. Tommy Curry says it's not an anomaly, and that's where I keep trying to get him back on to talk more about it, because I'm not. Oh, we got a feedback issue, brother Kaba, on your end there. So I'm muting you just for a quick second. But you know, Tommy Curry is argues and shows data that suggests that is the case, that black boys are actually suffering more at the hands of even by black women. And I have to, again, I'm not clear on that, but I've been trying to get him to come back. But anyway, I just want to say very quickly, I'm not looking too carefully at the chat, and I don't see any of our other moderators in the chat, but Anthony Williams, I just want to just shout you out and be clear that we have a very clear policy here at BPM about silliness in the chat. So I don't know to what extent you're being sincere and trying to raise questions or trying to be disruptive. But do check on that, and please don't. I hope no one assumes that you are speaking for those of us so-called mixed with some of the commentary you're making there, because boy, oh boy, oh boy. Anyway, so we gotta yeah, Anthony, you gotta check. You gotta take your anecdotal self somewhere else, man. I'm gonna give you a couple more chances here. If I keep catching some of this dumbness, I'm going to ask you I'm not gonna ask. I'm just going to remove you. You cannot take these anecdotes, to paraphrase Lorraine Hansberry, how did she put it, to forsake the specific in preference for the abstract, as to in this case be an error. So your particular individual experience should not be used as an analysis of a problem. And I would just want to encourage that, if at all possible. So anyway, brother, I want to get to a couple other things. And Kaba, and let me just check to make sure I wasn't cutting you off. So if there was more you wanted to add, please do. But there is, I do want to get to this Michael Hudson economy stuff a little bit before our guests come to talk about Ruchell Magee. But anyway, I just wanted to check to make sure I didn't cut you off on that last point. And you're still, I think I've still muted you there. Let me unmute you. And there we go.
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
How's it sound now?
Sounds good.
Okay. The only thing I'd add to that last point about boys being abused, I think that that's probably accurate, that boys being abused. But I think in Dr. Iyelli's statement there for the organization, she actually said that she actually admitted that there was an abuse between mothers on children. But again, I think that's a compound effect of the larger problem. You know, that's that
man. Hold on, brother. Let me try to get you to come back. Anyway, I think Kaba's on it, and Yeah, definitely. Shout out to everybody who's joining us this morning, and to those who are slowly. We're growing our audience here. I really appreciate you joining me this morning, and soon enough, starting Tuesday, we'll be back with the full remix crew. And in the interim, I and my guests will do the best we can to hold it down in the mornings, and particularly for those of us who are on the old people schedule. The mornings are just when it needs to happen, man. All these late nights that Cass still can sometimes do is impressive, but I'm not. That's not me anymore, man. I'm all mornings, but let me. So, and again, before I go to this, let me just restate for those who seem unclear. When I make reference to, as I'm going to here in a moment, the GrayZone or Jimmy Dore or who else do I look at? Status Quo. I look at Richard Medhurst. When I look at these sites, yeah, well, I count him in the GrayZone. Yeah. And in fact, he's going to be in one of the clips that I'm about to pull up here.
Yeah.
I think they do good work.
Glenn
especially
Greenwald, Kyle Kalinske.
All of it. Well, I'm not so much with Kyle. I don't watch his show too much, but I'm familiar with his work at least. And there are others. And my point is, I think they do really good work in the areas that they work in. They have clear blind spots. Brian Becker, absolutely. David Silberg, I would put him in that category. Richard Wolff, I watch his stuff all the time. I think they do great work. I learn a lot. It's important. And they have allowed me, most importantly for me selfishly, they've allowed me to not ever have to watch, like I don't watch Rising anymore. I'm off of them. They wore me out with, they just too much. But they allow me, definitely I don't watch CNN or MSNBC. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying me too. I don't watch Rising as much anymore either. I just kind of like cut them
They're
down.
too conservative, and they kept bringing that
much
what's his name?
Sometimes.
Yeah. They kept bringing that. What's his name? That one. Anyway, that one cat that he's always bringing on to talk about culture and race, who seems to know very little about culture and race, particularly in this country. But anyway, Abby Martin is dope.
Zaid,
that him.
What's his name? Zaid something.
That dude, Zaid Jelani. That him. He is horrible on those issues, and I don't think he knows much about anything in this country's history. So anyway, Abby Martin is dope. But my point is, I'm not I'm not in adoration of them. I did think it was funny when whoever was saying that I should go ahead and put a ring on Jimmy Dore's face. Like I think that stuff is funny. Talk about your point, Kaba, about self-deprecating humor. I mean, that stuff's funny. But in reality, I'm not going to them for analysis. I'm not going to them for these other things. I'm going to them strictly for the information. And when it comes to the interview, I want to show you just these little clips from what they're doing in talking to Michael Hudson, especially since I can't reach Michael Hudson. So if anybody out there knows how to reach Michael Hudson, let me know, because my attempts have failed, and I would love to get him on. But anyway, I'll work with this. I don't mind this either. I'll work with this because when the GrayZone sits down, and as they did the other day, and I'll put the full link in the show notes for this show, when they sit down with Michael Hudson, who, if anyone is unfamiliar, this guy is in terms of economic analysis, I mean, he's considered probably a pretty radical economist. I just think he's wildly left of the mainstream. But done a lot of work. I've been reading and following his work for years. I'll put a link to his website, michael-hudson.com. A lot of really good information on economics, and he's also taught and worked. He's got several professorships in China and elsewhere. Very interesting guy. So, but there are just a couple clips here. Oh man, let me double check that. Make sure the audio is going to work. There's a couple of I did not have it. Sections of this interview, and here you see Ben Norton and Max Blumenthal again at the GrayZone.com. Their work, I think, is really, really important on issues of the national security, the state, all that kind of stuff. Again, they don't talk to political prisoners. They don't talk about Black radical traditions. They don't talk to black people much, period. They don't do, there's a lot they don't do, but that's fine. I'm not looking to them for that. I'm looking,
right.
Other than I do think they should do a little bit of coverage of political prisoners. Again, if you're going to talk about Julian Assange and not Mumia, that's a huge problem, stuff like that. But anyway, check this out, because this first clip, these are really short clips that I just wanted to and I encourage people to really watch this whole thing. The new Cold War super imperialism and what he has to say about China and Russia and some of the details about the economies. I mean, it's very, but he says something here. He's talking about several other things, but his real point is to talk about the role currently that intellectual property plays in the global economy, and particularly as a function of what he calls super imperialism. And it's something I'm bringing it up in part. Actually, several of these I'm in a very petty way bringing it up in part to shout myself out, going back to even work I did years ago arguing this very point about intellectual property in the context of music and in the context of hip hop in particular. But the point that he makes here is right on. So I just want to take a couple quick seconds to play this part of the interview.
Often the SWIFT system does is block its trade and its economic relations with Western Europe. The United States, I think, realizes that if it can't exploit the third world countries or Russia or China, at least it can make Europe permanently dependent and drawn in really under the U.S. control. So if you look at the sanctions against Russia and China as a way to split Europe and make Europe increasingly dependent on the United States, not only for gas and energy, but also for vaccines. These are the two issues that have been in the news in the last few weeks. Blinken and other U.S. officials have said that Russia offering its Sputnik 5 vaccine to Europe is divisive, is an attempt to break up the world rules-based order, which is amazing. That Russia's attempt to, now that Pfizer and the other American companies are not producing enough vaccine to provide to Africa, South America, and Asian countries, the United States is attacking Russia and Cuba and China for offering the vaccines and saying their attempt to save lives through the rest of the world is an attempt to divide and break up the American order, because only the Americans can have the intellectual property monopoly, something that Blinken mentioned in his speech, and that President Biden mentioned. The intellectual property monopoly means that America gets to tell other countries, our firms have the right to say your money or your life to third world countries, and that will be our means of, well, you can't pay, well, why don't you sell off some more of your infrastructure? Why don't you sell off more of your oil or mineral resources to us? So what we're seeing is an intensification of economic warfare against almost all the other countries in the world, hoping that somehow this will divide and conquer them instead of driving them all together.
All right, so that's one quick point, one quick section of that I wanted to play and to highlight very quickly for our purposes. One, again, shamelessly to selfishly say, that was the point I've been trying to point out for a long time. And if you even go back and check the 10th anniversary I Mix What I Like video that I did, I talk a little bit about it there. But the point being that this country doesn't produce anything anymore. This country doesn't produce on the order of industrially in an industrial context that it did previously. So its number one business is the ownership of the rights or of the ideas that drive almost all of the economic that drive the economic engine globally. So as Hudson was saying there, this country doesn't produce anything, so it's going to say, through public policy and control over intellectual property, in this case over vaccines, to say no one else in the world can deliver their vaccines but the United States and its patent holders, who have patented vaccinations using our publicly funded research, our publicly funded schools, grants, all that kind of stuff that Pfizer and other companies then can privatize and then block in terms of the delivery to other parts of the world, other than in exchange for their money or their resources, or as Michael Hudson says, your money or your life is how it's going to work. So all of the extraction that has already been, that has already almost taken place to drive this so-called first world is almost at its limits. So the new way of doing it, especially in this country that doesn't produce anything, is to control intellectual property, of which at the time I was arguing music and copyright is one small subset of this much larger intellectual property problem. Anyway, so I just wanted to play that one, and I got a couple others, but Brother Kaba, did you want to have any particular reaction or thoughts on any of that at all?
Absolutely. I mean, it also shows just in general that it's really not about the health of the population of this country or even the world, because they talk about this as a global pandemic and the world, and so forth. And, they stopped, people from people coming in from India or whatever because of the, but yet, because if the countries that this country considers to be its, biggest and most threatening enemies, particularly countries like Russia, Cuba, China, produce something that could possibly, help in the process, we don't want it, simply because, for one, obviously, like you mentioned, they're not going to make any money off of it. But also, it's because, that it's an ideological kind of political disagreement that they have as well. So there's that. And then also, of course, obviously, in addition to the fact that they're getting all these profits, in addition to the fact that these are publicly funded drugs, which should be free, and should be accessible to everybody. You can't sue either. If something goes wrong with one of those things, you can't sue. So it's pretty much a foolproof piece. So basically, you're going to buy from us or nobody else. That sounds like a mafia move right there. That sounds like we got this particular alcohol, and you're going to buy it. And
you're going to buy it, and
that's like right. Walmart, the Walmartization.
That's it. And you were right, and Hudson does point this out, to be fair to him, and he makes the point. But you are right that this is largely a political, ideological issue. They don't want it to be seen that countries like China or Russia that have different approaches to social and economic arrangements could be doing something that would help the world. Because if you start raising questions, well, how is it that China's economy can accommodate a situation where they can vaccinate the entire world? And this brilliant capitalist one can't do it. You start raising questions that, but I mean, well, part of the argument that I think Hudson makes is that they can't do it. That is that the United States, unlike the Chinese arrangement, because there is no centralized, there is a lack of a centralized order here. In comparison to China, that they can't produce enough fast enough in the ways that China and Russia have been able to, and even Cuba has been able to, and they damn sure don't want Cuba to be seen as being able to help the world medicinally or any otherwise. So anyway, I'm not entirely sure how right or wrong that is. I would probably defer.
What I'm saying is that the United States doesn't want the public to know. The American public, for the most part, to know that those other countries can do it too.
That's right. I'm sorry.
Because America wants to be seen as the only, as the savior, as the only way. See, this is America. Look at what we've done in America. We've created this vaccine in record time, and we've been able to roll this out and get all. That's the propaganda that they're pushing on the people. And in China and Cuba, even for the longest, has been like trying to get offer help, whether it's this particular instance or in the case of Katrina and other instances. They've said, look, we got doctors here. We're training doctors that are from the States. There's a young lady about 10 years ago. I was a part of a team. We helped to fund her education down in Cuba when she became a doctor, and now she's helping out in the community, because that's one of the stipulations, is that you go back to your community and help out with the community. So they don't want the larger public to understand this, which also ties to the media piece, that you talked about before, and the importance of having this kind of media space, because of obviously the CNNs are not going to work on these stories, because when you look at the ads, who's on the ads? Johnson and Johnson, Pfizer. It may cause and it may cause death. It's like, what did he say, death?
He sure did.
He said
but
death,
don't focus on that part. All right, check this out. I want to show this other piece. Now this piece I want to show particularly specifically, though they're not talking of it in this way. I want to show it for the specific argument that we see being constantly promoted and again even now, that Black people can bank our way out of our problem. And I think that I just check this little clip out about what Michael Hudson is saying about the role of banks in the world today.
Maybe you can explain a little bit more about how this is actually, when we see Russiagate or this Cold War rhetoric, it's actually kind of a marketing device for the real conflict of economic and social.
And Kaba, Max is raising your question there. Your point
threat isn't a trade rivalry. It's not one of technology at all. It's the existential threat is to the idea of an economy based on completely a rentier system. In today's world, the banks play the role that landlords played from the feudal epoch through the 19th century. And all of classical economics, the whole concept of free markets, from the physiocrats with their laissez-faire, through Adam Smith, through John Stuart Mill, and the whole of classical economics was to free industrial capitalism from the rentier class, from the landlords, from banking and the monopolies that banks created in organizing trusts. So the U.S. realizes that the economy's been transformed in the last 40 years, since the 1980s, since Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. When Margaret Thatcher said there is no alternative, of course there were many alternatives, but the United States says if we can turn the rules-based order of free markets and classical economics upside down and say our rules-based order means no government power to regulate, no government progressive taxation, but a flat tax like we convinced Russia to have, that they still have, by the way. If we can have a rules-based order that backs the rentier class, a hereditary, financial, wealthy 1% of the population, holding the rest of the economy in debt peonage or reducing them to other forms of dependency in a patron-client relation, then we've restored essentially the feudal economy. But in order for us to do that, we have to make sure that there's no alternative. We have to prevent any alternative, and China is an existential threat because what it is doing in its policy, which is very largely ad hoc and purely pragmatic, China's policy is exactly the policy that made the United States the industrial power of the world in the 19th century. China, like the United States, built public utilities to provide public services at low subsidized costs so as to enable its private industry not to have to pay for the costs of education, for high rental costs and housing costs, and high monopoly rents. China's doing exactly what the United States did, and what the United States now says no other country can do what we did. We've pulled up the ladder, and our wealthy rentier layer of the population that's got rich, now having gained control of the United States and its politics, we want to control the whole world. And if there's another successful economy, whether it's China or Russia or Iran or Venezuela, if there's any other economy that retains a strong state power, strong regulatory power, progressive taxation, preventing of a landlord class from somehow increasing housing costs, privatizing medical and health insurance, so instead of making it a public right. Well, if we can prevent that from occurring anywhere, then people will really believe there's no alternative but to let our takeover that reverses the entire last 2 centuries of free market economics. And now the economy is to be free for the 1% to act, to take over government enterprise to privatize every part of government, including government itself, including the central banks, especially, including the health system, the educational system, all running it either for profit or at a cost that has to be paid by credit and creation.
Anyway, I'm going to stop it there real quick, but as he ends there, he's saying we're headed towards recreating the economy of the 13th century. And the point that I was wanting to highlight is that he's saying that banks are playing the role today that feudal landlords played in the past. And I thought especially of, I don't know if anybody saw this, but the film that stars Michael Keaton about the founder of McDonald's. And there's a scene in that movie where the founder of what we know of as McDonald's is looking to take away the franchise from the two men who actually created the first restaurant. And the lawyer he sits down with tells him that he's looking at this incorrectly. And the lawyer's basically saying, work with the banks to own the land on which McDonald's restaurants are put. And then you don't have to worry about whether or not you own or control the restaurant itself, because you will control the land on which it rests. And then everything that they do will be based on basically what you allow them to do. And you will charge them rent and make all of the money far and above what you would make if you had more control or ownership of the franchise of restaurants itself. And what Hudson is showing here is that this is becoming a global phenomenon, and one of the reasons why the United States is doing some of the things it's doing vis-a-vis other parts of the world. But my specific point again is to remind people that as we continue to hear about black banks and buy black, bank black, etc., we're doing so outside of a recognition or an understanding of what a bank is actually here to do. We can go back and read Lenin and others about, banks and imperialism, but I think this is a more, what Hudson is saying here is a more modern, up-to-date, and in some ways simple explanation that banks cannot be here to redistribute the wealth we're creating to help us. The banks are here to make sure that as he said, the rentier system, that they are collecting all of the rents from all of us, aggregating those rents, and then investing them for the purposes of the owners of the banks into the global economy to make all the money, while we are just, again, the natural resource to be exploited. Anyway, I got one more clip I want to show, but Brother Kaba, let me invite your any thoughts on any of that, any response to any of that. Oh, and we just lost. Oh man, we had to get him back. All right, well, let me show one more, because this is somewhat similar for me in terms of, and it's a much shorter clip, which in many ways to me says it all. Similar to this issue of, and really my point is simply this, and this is one reason we're going to get to our next set of guests in just a few minutes to talk about Ruchell Magee and political prisoners, because what Magee and others represent is what really is our only power: organized political movements that are militant and ideologically clear and based on organized people. We are not going to get free. We are not going to see an improvement of our situation through banking, through consumption, through any other mechanism. All right. So, and we're not going to be able to do it through saving our money or investing our money. That's not, all of these are attempts to get us away from what is our only strength. One of the other things that has been coming up more and more for me, and in my personal life, privately, certainly from students and in social media, is this issue of cryptocurrency. Now, I simply acknowledge that the clip I want to show you is, again, selfish, because it's, for me, again, me just saying I told you so, because my initial argument is cryptocurrency is not a solution. Public policy is a solution. Public policy determines what wealth is, who gets it, how it's defined. All of that is public policy. So the idea that we can avoid political struggle in favor of banking, or in this case, cryptocurrency, is to me more of just the nonsense propagated mythology. So Let me just show this quick last little clip from this interview with the GrayZone and Michael Hudson, and they get right to it in the Q&A themselves.
We were talking about our discussion before the interview, and Professor Hudson said he doesn't follow cryptocurrencies a lot, but I'm just curious because we got a question over at Patreon. Professor Hudson, what do you think about cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin? Also, Dogecoin has become popular, and this is related to non-fungible tokens, NFTs. There's been an argument that all of this is just it's just a new form of speculation for rich people who have nothing to invest in. And there's another argument, especially for NFTs, is that this is a new way to launder money. But I'm wondering what you think about cryptocurrencies and these new technologies.
Well, I think that functionally speaking, cryptocurrencies are like Andy Warhol etchings. They have no intrinsic value except the fact that other people want to buy them, and enough other people may want to do is trophies. As people get richer and richer, they want to buy trophies. Andy Warhol etchings and other bad art is one example of a trophy, and having money in a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin is another kind of a trophy. I think its main function is either money laundering or tax evasion. And certainly the amount of energy that it uses to mine Bitcoins makes it impractical as any actual means of payment. So you have essentially cryptocurrency only as a means of storing your liquid money in an asset that you think other people will buy. So it's all based on expectations, nothing intrinsic at all. It gives new meaning to the phrase fictitious capital.
That's it. New meaning to the phrase fictitious capital. And he goes on to say how it has no effect on the dollar. So when people are talking about you can replace the dollar with you know, some one or another Bitcoin, it doesn't make any sense. And again, I would come back to, from my point, that the reason other countries or in other parts of the global economy operate on the dollar is political. It has nothing to do with the currency itself. It's a political imposition in an ignoble global relationship with the West and the United States. And when countries, and Hudson does get into this, to the extent people or countries can break away from the dollar, they'll do better. They'll be likely safer and less beholden to U.S. foreign policy, which is ultimately the point. That if you're beholden to the U.S. dollar, if everything is exchanged on the dollar, then when the U.S. decides it's going to do something or withhold it or pull it back, they can do it. But the solution isn't creating a cryptocurrency or investing in a cryptocurrency, and it's certainly not what is going to overturn unequal relationships between, you know, rich and poor, et cetera, and so forth. The last point I would want to make, this is all in the context of Hudson also describing the fact that 1% of the population owns 83% of the stock. And that same 1% has made well over $1 trillion just in the last year since COVID. So finance and the elite are doing quite well in all of this, in part because they can write public policy legislation that redirects funds and wealth or creates wealth for themselves. So, Brother Kaba, welcome back again. And any response or thoughts on any of that, whether it's the cryptocurrency piece or the banking piece or any of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a lot, man. You know, you mentioned that the 1%ers own like 83% of the stocks. And they have this thing what they call floating, and basically the remainder, the remaining 17%, you know, per se, is pretty much floated, and then they kind of just control that at their whim. And of course, they know whether or not, you know, the stock's going to go up or going to go down and so forth. So they basically control and say, and they have to hold on to they get to hold on to their stocks that they have for 6 months. You know, that, you know, the stocks that they allow to float. So it's all controlled, and it's all a belief system. And this whole fiat currency piece with cryptocurrency is another example of that. You know, I've been saying a lot on the air for the past year or so that this world is really headed toward a feudal system, and you know, hearing that in Hudson talk about that, kind of confirms what I was thinking, because I remember when I was growing up, we used to have these medieval festivals that used to be in the area. The area where I'm from is an area where John Ringling, one of the Ringling brothers, used to live. He and his wife Mabel, they were like big curators of the arts, and their home, which is like a size of a castle, it's actually a museum now. And they used to have the medieval festivals there, and I remember we used to study the medieval times and stuff. And it just reminded me as I'm looking at contemporary times, contemporaneously, I'm looking at the fact that this world is headed toward a feudal society again. Basically, where you have and have nots. There's no middle class. It's just either you got it or you don't. And then, the people pretty much who are in charge, the gentry, pretty much live in centralized areas. And then you have a moat around the area to keep out all of the savages and so forth. And I'm thinking about gentrification and how all of these people are moving into the city. The gentrification, the gentry, the higher class people are moving into the cities, almost just like, in these castle kind of areas surrounded. And as I look around now in DC, I mean, condos coming up, there's nobody even living there, and they're building these condos. To your point about real estate and rent, that's one of the big areas that they've always invested in. They already know, because they already have a built-in gentry class that they know is going to be able to afford a $300,000, what we would used to call studio space, But again, and going to the bank and black piece, I think that's important too. Just yesterday, I was just listening to a radio program, and there was a brother on there. He was talking about the fact that the reason why black folks, we don't support each other. We don't support, people in business, or he was talking particularly about lawyers. And so we need to be able to fund our lawyers and so forth. And we just won't do it. And the reality is that, and I have to be honest, years ago, I had that same kind of mentality that the reason why we're suffering, the reason why we're where we are economically is because of bad, choices. And we buy too many Nikes and Jordans and that kind of thing. And it seemed frustrating, and it kind of plays into the frustration that a lot of us have. I've come to realize through, your work and ironically, ironically, the work of people like, somebody who used to be cool with, who's now started an organization that's talking crazy and anti-Pan-African, which I won't even get into that right now. Ironically, through people like them and yourself, kind of, pull my coat to like, no, this is the way money works and finance works. And so it makes perfect sense to me now. So it's not about that. But this brother was talking about that yesterday, and I had to laugh about it, because in his talk, he was basically saying that black folks don't have any money. He said we don't have any money. And then later he said he blamed black people for not being able to support, folks who are doing work. And I'm like, but you just told us why, that we don't have any money. Like, most of us don't have the money to do it. And so I think that that's something that's important. And we have to also realize too, that the black banks are connected to the white banks, which is why, people like myself are down with cooperatives and down with those kinds of things. There's a book, Collective Courage, that this sister put out, that organization I belong to. We had her speak
Dr.
a couple months
Nemhard
ago, actually, dealing with the Dr. Nemhard. Yes, Dr. Nemhard, out of dealing with the cooperatives, because that's it, obviously we're going to need some capital, but having capital in a collective sense, and not having like a president and having to go jump through all these hoops and pay all these interest rates and have the money being taken and given to corporations, to your point, that actually push us out of the cities, and then we can't even afford the places to, where we used to live and so forth, is a totally different piece. But this notion of the banking black as if that's going to get us out of the situation is totally misguided. And unfortunately, too many people still believe in that mythology.
I mean, a lot of work goes into it. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I, not only, never mind my own work, but this issue. I'm just mute you again. For some reason, we get that feedback when I'm talking. And in fact, what we're going to do is, I'll just say this. One of the reasons why I wanted to show Hudson and hopefully one day have him on, but and others, is because, again, we can't continue to cut ourselves off from information just because the information is coming from places that we may not socialize or politicize or build with. I mean, that to me is irrelevant. We need some of this information, and in some of these pockets and spaces, they're having conversations and sharing information that we're not getting or not getting enough of. And then, of course, there is this intended, and it would argue particularly targeted at us, wave of propaganda to keep us from getting there. So, but let's do this. We at least one of our next guests is already here. We're expecting several others as we get into this next hour discussion about Ruchell Magee and political prisoners and probably some other related issues with Brother Kaba, and hopefully a whole bunch of you and who will stick around. But I do want to take a quick break, as I've heard others describe it, a quick bio break. Let everybody step out for a quick second, get what they need, and come right back before we start the next hour with our guests in this discussion. But I do want to thank everybody who's here. Dare I say, we're even at our close to remix morning show numbers in terms of viewers live, which I really appreciate. As again, I just try to hold it down until we get back on Tuesday. But please do continue to hit the like button, the join and share and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. And invite somebody, tell a friend, tell an enemy, colleague, comrade to come on through and get some of this goodness, excuse me, as we continue into the next hour. So let's do that, Brother Kaba. If you don't mind, let's take a quick step aside real quick. Again, thank you for joining us this morning. Thanks to everybody else. And we'll come back with our guests and this discussion of Ruchell Magee right here on our Mix What I Like Live and Black Power Media. So don't go anywhere, everybody. We'll be right back in just a quick second. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, what's up, world? Welcome back again. I Mix What I Like live here at Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball, happy to be your host. And as always, please make sure you are liking, sharing, subscribing, joining if you can. This ever-expanding channel and supporting all of the shows as much as possible. Of course, later today, we have Lukman Nation, 5 o'clock Eastern, followed by Last Dope Intellectual at 7, and then 9 o'clock, Renegade Culture. Sundays with Sundays on Sunday night with the Ear Doctor is going to be another hot one, he promises, with a special Mother's Day mix. 8 o'clock Eastern time Sunday night, so please check that out. I'll be back with I Mix What I Like live on Monday talking about Colombia. And Davey D said he didn't like what I had to say. Nah, that's a little too strong. He brotherly, comradely disagrees with my perspective on the false hip-hop narrative and the misrepresentation of C. Dolores Tucker. So he's going to talk with us about that on Monday morning. And then Tuesday, we're back with the Remix morning show. So please come on back and stick around. Brother Kaba has been stepping in with me this morning to co-host a little bit and looking forward to having him do that as much as possible on these, at least Fridays, as we hold it down for the Remix morning show and all of that is a holdover of sorts until that. So brother, I appreciate you and good morning again. Welcome back. But now go ahead if you want, but and then I'm going to introduce our next guest, get into this great discussion about Ruchell Magee. But go ahead. Yeah. Oh, you're muted. Let me unmute you. Hold on. Go ahead. Okay.
Yes. Well, first of all, good morning, and I want to say too that I agree with you for your assessment of C. Dolores Tucker. I actually heard her being interviewed years ago by Joe Madison when he used to have a local show here before
the Eagle,
all the way to Sirius XM here in DC. Yeah. He's something else, but it was a really good interview, and she really got a chance to explain herself and where she was coming from. And my position on her changed right then. Like a lot of people, like that song Free Mamiya, like you had mentioned before, and with Pac, of course, my position on her was a little bit different. I thought she was, saying something else that she actually wasn't, but she actually clarified. Now, of course, yes, to your point again, it may have been a little bouginess, a little black bourgeoisie-ish, but at the end of the day, she was actually making a whole lot of sense. And she was actually criticizing a lot of the stuff that people who are into real hip hop are criticizing now. She was doing that back then and saying that, we need to do better with this. So, and to your point, she did mention that she loved our children. She's not against our youth.
Of course.
She just wanted us to have a little more focus. So, yeah.
And on my point again, people could check the piece is the argument is that the absence of her revolutionary politics or her lack of revolutionary politics is no excuse for the false presentation of her argument in advance of itself a false historical narrative of what hip hop has been and meant to be in this country. So anyway, that's really the point, but it's not so much a defense of Tucker as much as it's a defense of the lack of appropriate, it's a condemnation of the inappropriate attack on her, which was a mask and a cover for really backward and conservative politics. So anyway, with Davey D, hopefully, I'm sure he'll have plenty to say. We'll invite that, but let's get to our next guests who have gratefully joined us to talk about, again, this brother who deserves so much more attention than he gets, as do all political prisoners. And among these guests that I'm talking about is Harold Welton, who has organized with the Southern California chapter of the Black Panther Party, East Los Angeles College Black Student Union, Los Angeles SNCC, Jonathan Jackson Educational Cadre, union organizer with SEIU Local 99 and Black August LA. We'll also be joined by Kameron Hurt, who is a youth organizer with the Los Angeles branch of the Party for Socialism and Liberation and an organizer with the Coalition to Free Ruchell Magee. We're also going to be joined by Tina Duong, and please correct me if I mispronounced that, Tina, when you get here, who is a Vietnamese organizer who started organizing in Los Angeles with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. She's currently the web designer for the Coalition to Free Ruchell Magee and is based in Vietnam. We're also going to be joined by Allegra Taylor, who is the daughter of political prisoner Hugo Pinell and an organizer with Village Advocates of South Sacramento, a member organization of the Coalition to Free Ruchell Magee. So good morning to all of you. As I bring you all up, it's a pleasure to have you here. I greatly appreciate you joining us, and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do need to make a correction. That's the Village Advocates of Sacramento, not South Sacramento.
Okay, so did I? My bad if I said that, because
no,
it's not.
You probably had some old info. That's probably my bad. I'm sorry.
No, it's not. Oh yeah, okay, sorry about that. Okay, got you. Thank you for the correction. Appreciate you. Appreciate all of you. And Allegra, if I can start with you, forgive me. I don't really know if there was an order here or if I'm going at, but if I can, I just wanted to shout you out, given that your father, unfortunately, the late Hugo Pinell, also someone who didn't get enough attention in his time, but for some of us represented heroically a wing of this struggle that so I just wanted to shout you out and maybe start with you to maybe say a word about Hugo and his relationship to this struggle, and then maybe be the segue to his still living comrade there, Ruchell Magee.
Yeah, so yes, my dad's Hugo Pinell. I call him Daddy. And he was friends with Ruchell Magee. I visit my dad every weekend before they murdered him. And at one of our visits, we were talking about Ruchell, and he told me to write him. So I wrote him a letter and got in contact with him at the suggestion of my dad. But hearing my dad tell the stories about his relationship with Ruchell, the life that he lived in prison, to now have to stand in the gaps to release an elder, even older than my dad, one who stands on principle, one who will not change his narrative for the principles of which he stands for. Ruchell's fight reminds me of my dad because my dad stood on principle. If they live by principle, they'll die by principle. That's who they are. That's what they're about. And the struggle is real. It's not over yet. That's why we're still fighting. So the fact that we're standing up together, jointly fighting for Ruchell, I would think that my dad would be pleased with that. Very pleased with that. So we do write him. My grandmother also still writes Ruchell Magee. She's 96 years old now. We're still waiting for justice for the murder and assassination of my dad at Folsom Prison. I continue this fight because we still have to fight.
I don't mean to forgive me and check me if I'm being inappropriate here, but I thought it's important to remind folks that your father was, as you point out, assassinated, and that if you could say anything else about that, because my reason for bringing that up and asking you about that is because this whole statute of limitations on revolutionary struggle. And it is something that I think we need to be reminded of, and that while so many people are languishing in prisons, even as political prisoners, that they remain unsafe and remain a threat to the powers that be, so to speak, that got them there in the first place. So if there's anything you can or would want to add, please do about that.
So we're still waiting for a trial date. We don't have a trial date yet. They're still in discovery 5 years later. My dad was set up to be murdered by the system. That's it in a nutshell. To have him released and free on the yards, being the organizer and the leader that he was, I'm pretty sure when they saw them all out there having ice cream and enjoying themselves on the yard, they'd probably say, yeah, we got to get rid of him. Let's do this now. So they planned to kill my dad. They planned to murder him. They couldn't have him being a voice, not in the prison system. And I believe that it was deliberate. I believe that they set this thing up. My dad was supposed to be a part of the documentary for solitary confinement, prisoners held in solitary confinement for a long time. I didn't see that documentary until after my dad was murdered. But I found out that Craig Haney, who was actually my dad's therapist on the San Quentin 6 trial, was the author of that documentary. And when I contacted him to question why wasn't my dad in this documentary, I was told by him that my dad was on the list to be interviewed at Pelican Bay. And when he called to make the appointment, they told him that some of the people on the list had been taken off. That was the abrupt move to move my dad out of Pelican Bay and take him to Folsom. That was the beginning of the setup of his murder. So they played the role, took him through the fake ass step down so-called program, which I don't believe in at all because I think it's a bunch of bullshit. They skipped steps and, they just went through the motions to get him in position to murder him. That's it.
Forgive me for not setting this up more appropriately, but just for folks who are not aware, Hugo Pinnell was a member of what was called the San Quentin 6, along with Willie Tate, Johnny Spain, David Johnson, Fleta Drongo, and Luis Talamontes, who were accused of participating in the August 21st, 1971 escape attempt of among others, George Jackson. For me, at least, I just would want to. I appreciate your father for a number of things, not only for the politics he represented, but also representing this idea that of Black and brown unity that I think is important, particularly today as it's being mischaracterized or abused or whatever. That this was a brother who saw his destiny as maybe not someone, I guess, biologically Black American or whatever, as seeing that the struggle of Latin America is intimately linked with the struggle of Africans in this country and elsewhere, and stood on, to your point, stood on that principle. So anyway, before we move on to I just wanted to make that point at least clear. And again, if there's anything else you want to add or clarify now or later, please do.
I do want to add that although my dad was the unifier, he was the spirit of the movement in prison. My dad, standing on the principle of Black and brown unity is because my dad understood about the class warfare that we're in. He understood the importance of Black and brown, yellow, all of us together. We were always better together. We're always better together. That's who we are. I do want to make one point real clear. Although my dad was Latin, my dad fought for Blacks because he believed that his roots on his father's side was African roots. He didn't know his biological father, came to the States, left Nicaragua, but he says the only thing that he remembers about his biological father is that they called him Negro. That was his nickname. Well, we all know that means Black. So my dad searched his roots and believed that his roots were from Africa, and that's why he stood on the principles that he did and didn't vary from that, even when they tried to buy him out not to stand for the Black people.
Mm. Tina, since I've just seen the note where I've been clarified that I've mispronounced your name, I figure we should go ahead and bring you into the conversation now to not only get that straight, and I think it's Tina Young is how I should have pronounced it, or closer. Thank you. And let's start with you. Where does Ruchell Magee come into this story if we're sort of transitioning from a focus on Hugo Pinnell? Maybe if you could draw that connection, and why is it so important that work be done around his freedom?
I can talk a little bit about why it's personally important for me to work on this campaign with other comrades. But I think we would like Harold to speak.
Okay,
first.
sure.
If that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem. Harold, good morning to you, my man. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. Sure, let's get it started, and maybe start with some of the basics about who Ruchell is and how he ends up in the situation he is currently in, and then what why we're gathered here and what we need to be doing.
Good morning, comrades, and thank you for inviting us to your program. I would like to send love and light to Romaine Chip Fitzgerald, who transitioned to the ancestors this year, a member of the Southern California chapter of the Black Panther Party, political prisoner for over 51 years. Also, I'd like to send love and light to Mumia, who's medically being assassinated as we speak, and hope to free him soon, hope to free Ruchell soon, hope to free all our political prisoners. To give you the front story on Ruchell Cinque Magee, he was born in Frankington, I spell it with 3 Ks, Frankington, Louisiana in 1939. When Ruchell Magee was 16 years old, he was accused of attempted rape of a 22-year-old married white woman. Ruchell Magee was convicted by an all-white male jury in 1956. He was captured and sent to the notorious, murderous Angola slave plantation, which actually was a former slave plantation, still a slave plantation. Ruchell was captured and did 7 years of captivity in Angola and was paroled to California in 1963. Ruchell in 1963 was charged along with his cousin with robbery and kidnapping. The robbery and kidnapping was of a dope dealer for a $10 bag of weed. He was sent to San Quentin slave camp plantation. He did 7 years up until the August 7th revolt, slave revolt in Marin County, 1970. During this time, Ruchell developed a sharp, keen sense of law. Ruchell wrote thousands of petitions while he's in captivity. He's writing legal briefs and petitions as we speak. Ruchell, essentially, since the age of 16 years old, has been in prison except for 6 months in California. So here we have a man that has served at least 66 years of his life in captivity. And as he writes in his letter, we've been in communication with Ruchell. As he writes in his letters, he ends the letters with, "I remain." And he is still an inspiration to all freedom-loving people. And in addition, Ruchell is 82 years old. 82 years old. He was acquitted. There were 2 trials. He was acquitted of all the major charges except for aggravated kidnapping. 82 years later, he's still a political prisoner. And we're working hard. We're working hard to get our comrade, your brother, our brother out of prison. And again, if we look at Ruchell in Louisiana in 1955, which is when he was captured. He was captured in August of 1955, the same month and year that Emmett Till was mutilated and martyred for allegedly whistling at a white woman. So there's the parallel of institutional racism and how Ruchell, I don't want to say began this journey, but this tragedy, this travesty began in his life. And we want to get our brother out. We want to get our comrade out. And finally, as far as the front story, as opposed to the backstory on Ruchell, I would like to thank all these comrades in the coalition to free Ruchell Magee. They have worked hard, and I'd like to give them their shout out, and they've worked hard.
Right on. Now and certainly many of us appreciate all that work. Well, we've heard a little bit of the front story. Kameron or Tina, let me bring you in and invite any of the maybe more of the backstory. You know, and I admit I love to hear about it as often as possible, and I admit my own at times trifling and petty reasons for it. But you know, that Marin County moment. I mean, we got to hear it. So somebody got to run that story for us to talk about what happened and why to this day, Ruchell, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that is still the moment that Ruchell is held up for, both, you know, obviously for what happened, but also what it represents symbolically. Kameron or Tina, do either of you? Oh yeah, go ahead, brother Kabal. You want to jump in real quick? Go ahead,
yeah. But before we get there, and I want to say good morning to the panel, and thank you all very much for the work that you're putting in, even from the other side of the world, which is incredible. You know, I think that's amazing. Let's talk about you, Harold. You just mentioned Ruchell's acumen with law and so forth. How did he get politicized? Was he always politicized? Where did this politicization begin? And that's for anybody to jump on.
It began in prison. Ruchell, not only did he read law, he also read liberation. And he became, like Comrade Field Marshal George Jackson, he was an avid reader, still is. And this is essentially where his liberation outlook consciousness began, in prison. Like a lot of Malcolm X, to name one, their outlook on revolution and liberation began. And they said he is a keen legal mind. He's filed thousands of petitions, not just for himself, for prisoners behind the walls who had different cases that they were fighting. Ruchell fought those cases for him, and that's where it began. I just want to add one more thing. That's where it began for Chip, remained Chip Fitzgerald. When Chip Fitzgerald was in juvenile hall, he learned liberation, the politics of revolutionary liberation in juvenile hall. He began to read and study revolution. So,
right on. Anybody else want to add to that, or take us anywhere else in this story?
Yeah, we definitely want to pick up. I want to thank you both for having us. You know, Jared, I've been watching your show for some years now. Very excited to join you. And, you know, I feel like what's important here is this is a person who, like so many brothers, so many sisters, was unjustly captured at first in this, not only 1955, not only 1963, but we have to understand this is a person who in his 20s had already spent, you know, about 15 years of his life in prison by 1970. And some of the worst ones, some of the ones that we've heard about so much. And, you know, Magee had gained this reputation as what I call like a people's lawyer. He had been doing this work. He had filed a wrongful death lawsuit for the prisoner Fred Billingsley, who was, you know, terribly beaten and tear gassed to death in his cell at San Quentin prison. That was February 1970. So Ruchell's work, you know, it did pay off, you know, in the sense, not that Billingsley was returned any breath, of course, but his family did get a large settlement based on the work that Ruchell was helping do. So we have to think this was 7 more years of torture inside of California's prisons. He's really proven here that the link between the Jim Crow South and what they call this West Coast, what they call this most progressive state, California. It hadn't found its progressiveness yet, I guess, because they had gone through so much. But August 7th, 1970, this is a day that I know people like Harold. You remember it like yesterday because he tells me the story so often that this was how I first learned about it, was through brothers like Harold, like G2, who's not here with us today, but is listening patiently on the other side, from YouTube. And August 7th, 1970, there's a few names that definitely have to be known. Ruchell Magee and William Christmas, they were the witnesses on the trial of James McClain, who was on trial for allegedly assaulting a guard after that Billingsley murder that Ruchell was helping on. So Jonathan Jackson, who is well known as the 17-year-old younger brother of prisoner and Black Panther Party Field Marshal George Jackson, and I repeat, 17 years old, he attempted to free his brother as well as the Soledad brothers, his collective brothers, by taking control of that courtroom in the Marin County Courthouse. And this is something, as we know, the state does not like its prestige being challenged whatsoever. They don't like the idea that, Black people in particular can inflict any sort of like damage or get their own demands immediately fulfilled in the way that Asada was liberated. There's a reason that, there's still a price on Asada's head as well. It's very similar. So Jonathan Jackson, he announces, we're taking over. He offered weapons to Magee. He offered weapons to Christmas. He offered weapons to McClain. So Ruchell Magee, what's important to remember is he was not one of the conspirators beforehand. He was not, this was a split-second decision that this brother was making. And I just think a lot of people, if you're looking at, I may never get out of this cell, and this is my only chance at maybe getting this to the news, getting my unjust confinement out there, he made a bold decision. He joined in that rebellion. He knew this could be his last chance to escape that slavery and gain the world's attention. As we know, the ending of this story was incredibly tragic as the San Quentin prison guards, they arrived and they opened fire on that group as they left the building. So who was killed? Jonathan Jackson, William Christmas, James McClain, as well as the judge, Harold Haley. This is something not very well known. I think they tried to blame the judge's murder on Ruchell.
Right.
But, so many bullets were fired from the officers that, I mean, we know what actually happened. But who was wounded? Ruchell, as well as a prosecutor. But Ruchell survived.
Right on. No, I'm glad you brought up the moment that split second issue because it has to be assumed that in that moment you're thinking also, man, I might get out altogether. I might just dip. I might. And I thought about that a lot over the years, like trying to imagine what it must have felt like to be sitting there and all of a sudden that door kicks open and see Jonathan Jackson come in there and you'd be like,
yes,
I'd be like, hold up, like here comes the cavalry.
Right.
Or just the spectacle of it. I mean, it must have just been, that just must have been amazing. Before we go any further,
I want to just weigh in
sure.
one important point that I think is left out often when we're talking about the uprising there. The humanitarian side of Ruchell Magee insisted that they not take these two jurors because they had children. The humanitarian side of Ruchell Magee laid his body straight on top of a white juror that lived. So, they always try to make them out to be the monsters, the worst of the worst, the most notorious. But not only was he a jailhouse lawyer, he was a humanitarian.
Right on. Tina, let me invite you to jump in. What anything you would want to add or contribute to, or that we haven't covered already, but also we're definitely interested in how you come to this and the importance internationally of not only Magee but political prisoners here in the U.S.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wall. Thank you, President Peppa, and everyone here. I'm really glad to be joining you guys all the way from Vietnam to talk a little bit about like what kind of like campaign work looks like here. I on the website, and I'll be talking about that later on in a little bit. But I've been talking to a lot of people here about Ruchell Magee and the case, and frankly, people just don't get it. Like people don't know what, why a man this old is doing in prison. What did this person even do to be in prison that long? Especially in a country that people have known for a long time, to say it's all about free speech and all about democracy, but a country also with a history of stepping on the people of Latin America, of Africa, of Asia, in the name of spreading democracy. So Kameron actually brought me into this campaign as I when I already came back to Vietnam, and I stuck with it because I think it's important for people all over the world to help out whenever and wherever they can. I want to keep up, to fight alongside comrades in the coalition because I want to keep up. It's a way for me to keep up with the legacy of Black Asian solidarity. Malcolm X and Frederick Douglass always talk about China, how it's the first to break away from one of the first and the biggest defeat to Western colonialism. George Jackson, Huey Newton always studied Vietnam, was radicalized because of Vietnam. Martin Luther King with the Beyond Vietnam speech. So as I'm safe here, I'm in the safest place right now. I still want to contribute. I would not stop fighting for Ruchell and to free all other political prisoners as well. But if we have some time, I would like to speak about the website and what folks could see and interact with it, if that's okay.
Absolutely, and I'll go ahead and share, pull that back up if that might help. And I'm glad you mentioned at least a little bit of what you did in terms of Black and Asian solidarity, given what's going on in this country now with the attacks on Asian people, and often the reported attacks here are depicting African diaspora or Black people committing the acts. And whether that's being accurately reported or overemphasized in those incidents, I think it's important to emphasize the history that you're representing here. And then I also like to remind very quickly that my favorite story about Robert Mabel Williams is that when they met Vietnamese leadership, they were told that one of the Ho Chi Minh's generals had heard one of their broadcasts advocating guerrilla warfare and said that was the inspiration for the Tet Offensive, which many argue turned the tide of that conflict. And then, of course, I just, on behalf of the United States, want to, you're welcome for all that democracy we brought you and your country people in the process. Anyway, but here's the website. Please go ahead and talk us through whatever you like.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Ball. Thank you for pulling that
and
up.
don't forget about the Agent Orange and Agent Blue. All that
Absolutely,
as well that the United States offer.
Absolutely. All that freedom and democracy that was spread judiciously throughout that country. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is still affecting people till this day. And they're like, it's just the same justice system that is, oppressing political prisoners on a larger scale. They are using very, very, very demeaning and dehumanizing ways to deny this act of, spreading Agent Orange all over Vietnam through the U.S. justice system. But thank you for that. Here is the website, as you can see. So if you pull down a little bit, you could learn more about Ruchell, his biography. If you didn't hear what Harold and Cameron has already talked about, there's a lot more writing in there as well. There's the sign the petition button where you could go into and see the petition for Ruchell Magee and support him. That way, that's one of the ways that we mobilize people to support the campaign. Pull down a little bit. Yes, so this is a video that we made. I think we have to play it here, but I encourage folks to check it out. Yeah, it's about Ruchell and his case. And then below that, we have a subscription to our newsletter, so you could get updated about the campaign, and also to know when we'll have a donation option for people who want to support the campaign that way.
So this donate now up here is that not set up yet, or is that? Oh, yes, it's coming soon.
Coming soon.
That's it. Got you. There it is. All right.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And then the about Ruchell, and I think the next section will have very important the one beneath. Yeah. So this is a really important section. I know Allegra talked about the importance of writing to political prisoners, how her family writes to Ruchell for a long time now, and I want to re-emphasize this. It's so important for people in prison, for these people who are unjustly in prison, to know that we are supporting them, and so it's important for us to write to Ruchell Magee. There are some guides on how to write an appropriate letter to send to Ruchell, but also that we have to write to people in power to demand justice for Ruchell Magee. We have the addresses for the District Attorney of Los Angeles and also California Governor Newsom, and you could check out the addresses on the website, and also the template or guide on how to write an effective email to call for his freedom. But yeah, that's it for the website. Thank you for showing that to your audience. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Cameron, you wanted me to scroll down some more? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, just a little bit more. There's the governor as well as the DA.
Oh, right on.
Right. this fancy design where it pops up.
How is that right? All this fancy web work, you know what I'm saying? Tina's showing off. I see you.
Yes. Tina's quite humble, but, designed this website from the ground up. And, we're just really glad to support. And I mean, we really have so many questions for, the folks who have still held him for this long, 58 years. We have these questions for, Governor Newsom, for the DA Gascon here in Los Angeles. This can't be just a coincidence. Like, it's not just a coincidence. Oh, they forgot about Ruchell's file. And now, it's been 58 years. We don't know why.
Well, it has to be that he's been, a troublemaker in prison. He's got a whole bunch of charges. What else has he been doing that they're saying that, because every time I read about these folks, they're always quote unquote model prisoners. So then is there an official claim that is being made as to why Ruchell is being held, or is there just, as I thought you were saying, they're just we're just going to ignore it and hope people don't talk about it?
They don't need an official claim. They got the power to do what they want to do. What they bank on is us not doing nothing. That's what they bank on. So we've got the campaign, we've got the petition, we've got where we're getting the word out. We need to, and when we write, we don't need to write and ask questions. We need to write and demand that they release Ruchell Magee. We need to put a demand on everything else. There needs to be a straight out, all around demand from Vietnam, from LA, Sacramento, and anywhere else in the US. But when we write all of these political officials included in our letter, we need to demand the release of Ruchell Magee on the basis of humanitarian rights. Human rights. He's an elder. He served his time. They're keeping him for political reasons. We need to demand the release of Ruchell Magee, and we need to do it in every letter that we send out in bold print.
Yes, sir.
That's right. 58 years. Yeah, after 58 years, that's the thing is we know that it's only for, the reason that he insulted these folks. And they want to make sure that the end of his life looks like Chip Fitzgerald's, looks like so many other prisoners and folks that we've lost. And I was just reflecting, we fight for political prisoners. We fight here on this extreme end of 58 years, but we have to remember that in 3 days, Sandra Bland's life was lost, for example.
Yes.
Her herself being someone who was very political, very active and conscious before she went in. So it's like the torture, it can be 3 days, it can be 58 years, but this is the system that has to stop, not to mention the fact that they kill people before they even go to jails. When he's facing COVID, this is big.
Let me ask you all this, because it's even coming up in the chat, and I admittedly, I don't know you all, so I wasn't really sure where you all would want to go with this, but for years, we've been hearing, like, first of all, there is this overall problem. People don't talk about political prisoners. Then the handful of us that do talk about political prisoners, there are our biases or our favorites or whatever. There's some who get more attention than others. And even within the political prisoner talking community, Ruchell doesn't get as much attention as he deserves, despite having been, as you point out, the longest still held political prisoner. But even within among that is this constant conversation around where's Angela Davis on this question? One of the more prominent people, period, associated, of course, symbolically or otherwise with the Panthers, with George and Jonathan Jackson, and this whole struggle. And people are asking in the chat, I have my own questions about this, but where is she on this? And what do you all think about these questions?
Can I address that?
Sure.
All right. In 1973, at Ruchell Magee's first trial, Angela made an appearance. She was out on bail. It may have been 1972. And that was it. She has not said anything that I know of or organized anything around Ruchell Magee. I don't quite understand. Maybe some of the other comrades may comment on it. I don't understand it. I don't understand with the fact that you were involved in you were part of a well-organized, well-financed, free Angela Davis and all political prisoner movement. You were acquitted of all the charges that Ruchell Magee is charged with. You're out. Essentially, nothing's going to happen to you, especially at this point in time. Nothing's going to happen to you, Angela. Can you say something about your comrade, your brother, our brother? Our brother, like the comrades are saying, is 82 years old. Say something. Bunchy, the founder of the Southern California chapter, used to say something if you only spit, you see? But also, I'd like to give a backstory, well, actually the genesis of the August 7th Marin County Slave Rebellion. In January of 1970, Soledad Prison, O-Wing, I believe, O-Wing, the prison guards let 8 white prisoners out on the exercise yard and 7 black prisoners out on the exercise yard. Predictably, a fight evolved, right? And there was a guard, I think his name was O.P. Miller. O.P. Miller was considered a sharpshooter. He assassinated 3 black or New African prisoners during that January 1970 fight at Soledad. W.L. Nolan, Alvin Miller, and Cleveland Williams were martyred on that day. We developed into what was called the Free the Soledad Brothers, because about a week after a guard was, I don't want to say corrected, in retaliation for the assassination of those three brothers, the guard was taken out, right? Well, Comrade George, Comrade Fleeta Drumgo, and John Cluchette were charged with that murder. So we have the Free the Soledad Brothers movement. We move forward in 1970, the movement Free the Soledad Brothers began to pick up a lot of attention and organization and attention through those efforts. And as we've discussed before, August 7th, Comrade Jonathan P. Jackson took human law into his hands to get folks free, you see? And so again, Angela was indicted on the same charges. She was captured in New York.
And she was accused of, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
okay.
She was accused of exactly what again on this? Because she was obviously not there at the courtroom that day, but she's caught up in this. Sorry, go ahead.
She was accused of conspiracy to murder, aggravated kidnapping, and allegedly supplying the weapons to Jonathan, two of the weapons that Jonathan had when he went into the courtroom. Mm-hmm. So she had 3 charges. And again, she was acquitted of all those charges. The aggravated kidnapping charge that she was acquitted of is the excuse for Ruchell Magee being held for 58 years in the California slave camp. If you think about the fact that, again, Ruchell Magee is 82 years old, for the last 50 years on the charge, like I said, he was acquitted of the other charges. On a charge of aggravated kidnapping, he should have been out. He should have been out. He should have been out. I can say that like all the rest of the interview. He should have been out. But like Allegra has said, and the rest of the comrades have said, it's political. But where do you stop the politics with a man that's 82 years old? He's 82. You see, he's suffering from some medical issues, right? Our comrade needs to be out, like all political prisoners. So on the Angela Davis question, she won't say anything about our comrade. Now, in speaking to one of our comrades that's not in the coalition, my understanding that she did say something in Oakland about a year ago at a rally for longshoremen in Oakland, but the type of support and attention that Angela has, she can do a lot to help get Ruchell Magee. Finally, if you say, have you heard of Angela Davis? Oh yeah, I know who Angela Davis is. The Free Angela Davis movement. They did a documentary on her. Very little was said about Ruchell Magee and that Free Angela Davis and all political prisoners. And then you say, well, who is Ruchell Magee? Crickets. So Angela can do it. She can do a lot to help our comrade, your comrade, our brother, your brother out.
I have a question. Theo, have we approached her? Have we asked Angela?
Not necessarily the people in the coalition, but people out of the coalition has approached Angela for the support we need. All of us need to get our brother out, and we haven't heard anything.
Okay, so I'm gonna take on the job of contacting Angela Davis.
Okay.
She needs to be in this.
Okay. Right on.
All right. Right on.
Yeah.
Personally, my thing is if she could tell people to vote for Biden and Obama, she could tell people to free Ruchell. So,
Yeah.
Right on.
But, you know, I wanted to jump in and ask a follow up there. And first of all, the look on everybody's faces when Jared first asked that question was priceless. But you know, and I know nobody's a mind reader and everything, but why do we? Can you all speculate as to why Angela has been largely silent on this issue, especially when she was so close? You know, at least to to George Jackson, in his situation. Could anybody speak to that? Like why would she not raise his name? And I know it's speculation, but
let me just, I'm gonna try to be. Listen, we all know that when prestige is involved, sometimes you'll sell your soul for that, especially when it comes to fighting for our people. So when our people, Black people, get into positions that they can influence or help their own community, that doesn't always happen. And because for them to take a step and stand with us who are fighting in this fight, it means that they might have to lose something. And so Angela Davis, she has prestige. She, she has a reputation. And I just want to challenge to see if maybe that would be the reason why she's not getting involved. But we don't know because we haven't asked her. So we need to ask her, and that's what we're going to do. But a lot of times when it comes to, I'm in Sacramento, California, and I'm not from here, but it's a different kind of breed out here. And so that's just routine, with Black people. And so all Black people ain't down with power for the people, and they're not down with all of us. And so, it's about them and their reputation and, maintaining their own thing, because you got to give up something to fight for this fight. Is she willing to do that? Well, we're going to find out.
Right on.
I do want to take a moment, given Angela, I can't find her phone number anymore. Call me, Angela. What's going on? No, call Allegra first. With the endorsements that we do have, I do want to give, big ups to the ones that we do have from Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., Jaleel Muntakim, 3 of the San Quentin 6, Luis Talamantes, Willie Sundiata Tate, and David Johnson, 2 of the San Francisco 8, Harold Taylor and Hank Jones, all the way to Gerald Horn, Brian Becker, Gloria LaRiva, Robin D.G. Kelly, Claude Marks from the Freedom Archives, and, this long running list of folks who have endorsed. That is power, that we are building, that we are slowly going and getting individuals, organizations, and such. And, the place where you can sign up and become an endorser yourself. We also appreciate Black Power Media support, clearly. You can check us out at www.freeruchellmagee.org/endorse. That's the endorsement form. You can go up there and write it in, because we got to build this list. So send it to your favorite people. And let's get the word out. We got a few more social media plugs we can give too as well.
And I don't leave out our brother Yusef Bunchy Shakur, part of the community movement in Detroit, for their endorsement of our campaign to free Ruchell Magee. I don't want to leave that good organization and that good brother out.
Absolutely, and of course, to shout us all out, Yusuf community. Routine may be too strong a word, but often on this platform, community movement builders. Kamal Franklin is the co-founder of this platform. So we absolutely, and we put this together, Black Power Media, to do this kind of work. So going forward, any support we can give on this particular show or throughout the platform, please let us know. I don't think I had done this, so I'm signing the endorsement form now.
All right.
as we speak. Honestly, I can't remember if I have or have not, so I'm just going to do it again, just in case, and would encourage everybody else to do the same. As I'm doing that, is there anything that anybody wants to bring up or say that I haven't invited, or Brother Kaba hasn't invited, or anything else that we need to I'm certainly not rushing anybody, but I just want to make sure as we move towards this hour that we've covered whatever we need to cover. And if we haven't, please take us there. Is there anything that we need to get to?
I would like to also say that this political prisoner movement and the mass incarceration, neo-slavery of today is one and the same. There are approximately 2 million people, probably 2.5 million people that are in prison in 2021. And out of that, at least 42% are New African Black people. 30% of that is women, Black women. And it's part of the entire movement to liberate and defund and tear down prisons and build a new human community. And that can't be done under capitalism. Can't be done under the system of profit and selfishness. And again, I wanted to shout out to Alvin Miller, January 1970, Cleveland Williams, and W.L. Nolan, who were martyred in January of 1970, in which this movement of the August 7th rebellion evolved from. And also, I know one of my comrades, I have to say this. He's listening on YouTube. But one time somebody asked me, did I think George and Jonathan Jackson walked on water? I told him, I didn't know they didn't. You think they're perfect? Yeah. I don't think, I think they're perfect. So, and all the comrades that have been martyred in different aspects of the revolutionary movement. Earlier, you were talking about the Cubans, man. The Cubans are one of our best international friends. Ask Assata Shakur, ask the Angolans, ask people all across the diaspora about the Cubans. Ask the people about the fact that, and also G2 Siddiqui and his involvement in this struggle to get us free. He's very tireless in terms of the work that he's put in. He's a formerly incarcerated person, and he's put in a lot of work. He's part of the coalition, and he is a good brother, a solid brother.
Harold, I gotta say, man, I really appreciate what you just said about Jonathan and George, and I wasn't ready for that, because usually when people start off that way, we're encouraged to say something like, "Nah, man, nobody's perfect," but da 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 da. You're like, "Hell yeah, they were perfect, and hell yeah, they walked on water, and damn right, and all that." I appreciate that, man.
Call me brainwashed or whatever, but I mean,
whatever. I mean, you're gonna be brainwashed. That's a good way to go. I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
somebody
perfect.
told me something about George that I'm not going to say. It's nothing.
I appreciate the use.
Somebody told
I
me
appreciate
about
the use of the term the slave rebellions when you're talking about
slave rebellion. This is what Comrade Ruchell Magee
I appreciate that. I appreciate that term.
Yeah, he's basing his defense on the fact that Joseph Cinque, who led a so-called mutiny after him and comrades being kidnapped from the motherland, and they led a rebellion over the slave ship Amistad. They were later captured and brought to the United States. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court then. This is in the early 1800s, and they were freed. And Ruchell has based his case on this for over 50 years. And I might add, Ramsey Clark, the former Attorney General who transitioned in April of this year, Ramsey Clark, in that first trial for Ruchell Magee, was his co-counsel, his co-defense. He defended Ruchell, and he defended the fact that Ruchell Magee was a slave rebellion. Finally, on that, I would like to say, I can't remember the juror's name. There was a black juror who was a postal worker. This black juror held out for acquittal in his first trial, and he said that the kidnapping was in fact unjust, so-called aggravated kidnapping. He told the judge that it was unjust. He held out on all acquittal on all charges based on the fact that he was rebelling. They were rebelling against slavery. What did Ruchell Magee say? Slavery 400 years ago, slavery now, paraphrasing what he said.
That's right. And shout out to the Freedom Archives and Claude Marks for that too, because I got to hear him saying that on audio clips that I used to run on mixtapes over and over and over. Freedom today, freedom yesterday, freedom today, freedom tomorrow. So yeah. Shout out to the Freedom Archives for that as well. Oh man, you said something else. I wanted to
real quick too, Jared.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah. We talk about the strength, and you talk about the fact that Ruchell is still strong and still talking about this in terms of this being a kind of an enslavement kind of situation. Some people would say, and I've heard people say this about political prisoners, particularly the ones that we're talking about here, who stay strong and are firm in their stances and are firm in their analysis. Some people say, why don't they just chill out for a little bit? Not speak so strongly, kind of tamp down on some of that revolutionary talk, tamp down on that slavery talk, tamp down on that, talk about capitalism and all of that. And just be, a model citizen in all the respects. And then maybe that'll help to get him free. What do you all, and anybody can take this. What do you say to that kind of mindset that people say, just chill out, get out, and then talk your trash?
I would, personally, I think it is physically impossible for this brother to chill out and forget the memories of, you're right. 1963, we got to remember he was bound and gagged in court. A lot like they say about, later Panthers and such. Bobby Seale, right? Bound and gagged in the courtroom when he tried to defend himself and make perfectly legal objections, So this, when he said you have to deal on your own tactics, you have a right to take up arms to oppose any usurped government, particularly the type of corruption we have today, he was telling the truth, that he drew that connection from, all the way back from Joseph Cinque and Sierra Leone being captured to right now, him being captured and held against his will and truthfully tortured by the system. That's my take on it is, I don't think he'll ever get those moments out of his head. And it just pains me, that he's still continuing this legacy of fighting captivity. Not to mention, as they say, today's political activists can so easily become tomorrow's political prisoners. That's a huge part as well.
Well, boy, I appreciate that. And shout out to everybody watching, because I was about to say something about hitting the like button, but we have more likes than viewers. So shout out to that fact and to this conversation and to our guests. And of course, to Ruchell Magee himself, whose spirit I'm sure is driving a lot of things, including that fact that folks liking it more than we have viewers. Listen, again, I'm not rushing anybody, but we are, we've crossed our hour here. Is there anything that anybody wants to add or leave us with? Or I'll just say from my end, I want to thank all of you again, and Brother Kaba for co-hosting with me this morning. And thanks to the Free Ruchell Magee collective here and the work you're all doing. And anything that we can do here on this show, on this channel, we're here. So please let us know. This is exactly, when we put this collective together, this is exactly the work we were talking about being here to do. So anyway, by the way,
I just want to reiterate.
Yeah.
When you write those letters, put your demand: free Ruchell Magee. Let him go. It's time to release him. This is the demand that we want to include in anything that we send to political officials. We need to do the hashtag. We need to do everything that we can to make sure that the system know we don't only have 30,000 plus signatures on a campaign for him, but we also have a demand, and the demand is for them to let him go. I want to reiterate that. I hope everybody who's listening will get off, go online, go to the website, look up the addresses, and let's get those letters out today to release Ruchell Magee.
And I think that's actually more, you guys have more signatures to free Ruchell than I think Kamala Harris got votes during the primary and during that. And so we got more people supporting Ruchell than supported the current vice president, who is happily telling everybody this country isn't racist. And so I just want to point that out, like, because that's pretty. That's well done, everybody, and let's get more signatures. I added mine.
Who was the former Attorney General of California too. Real quick, I know we're trying to wrap up, but what was her position on this particular case and others who are political prisoners out there in California?
Hey, that's right. We hated on Angela. What was Kamala saying?
Has she ever been approached about this?
Do we need to contact her too? Yes, indeed.
Contact her too. Sister girl who talked about getting bussed and needed to take the bus and all this. Well, get on it and help the brother get out there.
And did you hear what she said about the segregationist comment now? She said it was a debate. It was just a debate.
It was just a debate.
Come on
what do you expect? Now. Anyway,
right.
But in all sincerity, I think everybody should be reached out to. Everybody who does media, everybody who claims to be a politician, everybody who claims to be in an organization working on I think everybody. So why not Kamala, the top cop?
Can I say one more thing about Ruchell? Ruchell, from what we've gathered, he hasn't had a lot of disciplinary issues in prison. Yes, he has been forceful in terms of his writs to the courts, but he hasn't been as radical as we may have think he has been in terms of his conduct behind the wall. That's our job. We got Huey P. Newton out, right, through mass movement. We got Angela Davis out through mass movement. Let's try to get all our political prisoners out through mass movement. That's our job.
Right on.
Yes, and to the host, actually, I'm getting a very urgent request from our brother G2 on the through the screen. There's a brief actual words from Ruchell through someone who's in prison with him. That I wanted to share. It only takes about maybe 2 minutes, but it's all right. Yeah, I want to go ahead and share it. So this is audio recordings that we're not going to tell you how we got them, but they're from someone near Ruchell who's transcribing his words and saying them out loud. So let me stop introducing. Let me make sure you can hear it too.
Okay, Ruchell has asked me to send that to you. I hope you can make it out, but if not, I'm going to do my best to try to read it to you. Ruchell Magee case on writ of habeas corpus petition challenges Los Angeles County conviction. The pending legal document was a word filed with the Supreme Court of California at McAllister in San Francisco, case number S263467, July 21st, 2020. It presents newly evidence never heard that proves the 1965 conviction on a kidnap to bribe charge rests on court appointed lawyers' false, guilty, and insanity pleas used to undermine the misinformed jurors who was tricked in violation of jury tampering law. The new evidence is trial court records more than 55 years suppressed by the prosecution, trying to obstruct judicial review of the record, in parentheses, evidence of the jury tampering. Nobody denied evidence shown by the pending habeas petition to deny the facts will open cases for back as the 1950s involving racism, slavery practicing under color of law. The August 7, 1970 rebellion in Marin County record will open once again for investigation on the question of right to rebel. The habeas corpus proceeding costs about $10. Ask to buy a copy of the habeas corpus. If denied, which the clerks will no doubt do, call upon the NAACP in Sacramento for a lawyer to buy the habeas corpus record because the evidence is worthy of a White House interview with the president regarding racism/slavery with roots relating to every man, woman, and child in this country. There's another side to the August 7th, 1970 rebellion I brought out in the 1973 trial at San Francisco County. I will never be released from illegal prison until the LA County Police frame up is exposed in ways the pigs and their lap dogs can't camouflage evidence of my role in the 1970 rebellion. Jonathan Jackson made ways to expose American racist slavery. Okay, Conrad, get this to G2 if you can. G2 Sadiki.
There we go. So I just thought it was very important too that we shared those words directly from Ruchell through someone else. Very important, as we close out today.
No, I really appreciate that. And I want to let people know, just in case there are a few that don't, when you share this video going forward, use the timestamp option. So you don't have to share. You can come right to that audio piece to share with your friends and when you hit the share button and click the little dialog box that comes up that says start here. So you can get right to that audio piece so people can hear that and make moves on it as necessary. And I greatly appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, look, good people. Anytime that you need an outlet, I'm here. Our crew is here. Add us to your list. I greatly appreciate all of the work that you're doing, and want to support it as best I can. And I love to see what you all, this collective, the international aspect of it. Really appreciate that as well. And I'll, Brother Kaba, give you a chance to say anything, and anybody else want to take any last words, please do. But I'm greatly appreciative, and let's go. Free them all, everybody. Free RuchellMagee.org, and let's get this happening. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's the last word then, everybody. So I'll go ahead and piece it because I know you all are willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton, and we'll catch you next time. Absolutely.
Brother Jared, I don't know if we mentioned, but I wanted to mention the fact August 7th, the day that Jonathan was martyred, also James McLean and William Christmas were martyred on that day.
Right on. Appreciate that, Harold. Definitely thank you for reminding that. Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thank you again. We really appreciate you taking the time to come through. Shout out to that collective. Thank you all very much. Sister Allegra, shout out to you. Much respect to you and your family. Peace and power to you as well. Thank you very much. Brother Kaba, man, thank you, man. I've enjoyed this thoroughly and look forward to many more of these Friday mornings, as many as you can muster and we can make happen. I think this is great. Thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. And I apologize for my technical stuff this morning. I had some bandwidth issues. But yeah, it'll get better. As well, because we have to have a little talk with the company there to make sure.
Yeah, had to talk with the company and
that's straight. But I definitely, yeah,
man, get to talk with the company.
It's interesting how I have other. No, I was gonna say it's interesting to see if we having these back and forth. But I'm doing any other thing, and it's no problem. But when I have conversations like this, then there's always some kind of issue. But I did get the information as well from you as well, because I would love to have them on the radio program too, to kind of spread the word.
Absolutely. I'll put you all in touch.
And I'm going to definitely. Yes, please do. But man, I appreciate it, brother. So look forward to more. Look forward to Monday. Look forward to the Remix Morning Show, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday next week. I appreciate everybody on there, except for the one guy, but we won't mention his name anymore today.
Except for that one guy. Everybody hit up freeruchellmagee.org for sure. Please like, share, and subscribe here. There was one question I'll quickly answer. If I've ever invited Angela Davis to the platform, it's been years, but I have. And the response from her office was it was more or less, she is permanently busy. So I haven't followed up since then, but it is what it is. Frankly, I always look to try to talk to people who don't get the attention that she gets, and who are offering a different kind of politics.
You got to change your name to Amy Goodman.
How about that? Yeah, or CNN or MSNBC or whoever else. But again, the bottom line is whatever. I think she has heard plenty. The folks like Ruchell and people representing Ruchell.
Still do the work.
That's right. Yeah,
so we got to do the work and can't necessarily depend on. It would be good with her platform, if she could get the word out, and at the same time can't depend on her. The people have to get out here and do the work.
That's right. Well, again, shout out to everybody. Really appreciate the audience this morning, and appreciate you, Brother Kaba. And if anything that we didn't get to, whether in the live or whether you see this in the replay, like my man Pierre over at Comedy Hype says,
put it in the comments.
We'll catch you next time here at I Mix What I Like Live, Black Power Media. Dope Fridays, y'all. Stick around with the channel. So much more coming up the rest of this evening. Luke Ma Nation, Last Dope Intellectual, Renegade Culture, Riot Starter tomorrow, Mother's Day special, Sundays with the Ear Doctor, Sunday night at 8 o'clock, Mother's Day mix. And then we'll be back Monday morning. So peace, everybody, because we know you're willing to fight for it. Catch you next time. Thanks again, Brother Kaba. And we'll see you all next time here at Black Power Media. And I mix what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.